Right. Welcome to another edition of the Dinner Club Jambee with my friend Michael and Kazoom.
Yeah.
It's good to have you guys here. I hope you've had a decent couple of weeks. I'm sorry I wasn't here last week, but I was vacationing. With that in mind, I've been remote and almost completely cut off from recent events. I know something happened with some leak in the Supreme Court about Roe versus Wade, but I don't really have much of the details about that. So if y'all want to talk about that, we can certainly get to that. Or we can talk about anything else you'd prefer to talk about first. I shall leave it up to you, Michael. What can we talk about?
You know, the Roe v. Wade thing is okay to start with. I mean, it was a leak, but it's not a decision that has happened yet.
Right.
It's a leak of a draft. And what it says is they already took a vote behind closed doors. They know where everyone stands on it. And so they're preparing the final statement, the majority statement. The minority statement wasn't there in the draft. And it said that they were working on the minority response to it, but basically this is an unprecedented leak, and these sort of things have the possibility of maybe changing the course of the vote, because then people get a little bit of a taste of how the public's going to react to it. If not for the show, I might be downtown at the Capitol building just filming all the people that have been there every day since the leak.
Oh, right. Yeah, there's been, has that been nationwide? Has there been protests nationwide?
I think so, but is in the Denver Capitol, yes.
Right.
But, they're kind of clogging up the traffic downtown with people. With regards to the sides of protests, the BLM protests were only dwarfed by the We Are Women movement here in Colorado. And so the only thing that could be bigger than the BLM protests really is women's rights.
Right.
That people really show up for. And so I think, the fact that it leaked, we're going to see like the largest protests ever.
Well, I mean, I've never heard of a Supreme Court leak in my life. I mean, and maybe they happen, and I'm just like, blissfully unaware.
The last time it happened was actually the Roe v. Wade original.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's like the last time it actually happened. So like this issue, people even feel whistleblowerish enough to leak. This one issue is very, very charged, and it will test anyone's, sense of security for, sensitive documents. This one issue will definitely, see where your morality lies.
Sure. Yeah. I'm the first day I saw something about, I mean, I was out of service a lot. Oh, here comes Kate. Yay. Hi. The first time I got service again, because I was in and out of service while I was on vacation, I saw something about it, and I was just like, what the hell is going on here? And on day one, the main story seemed to be spun to be the problem was that there was a leak, not what was the decision or the fact that they're colluding about it, but that it was leaked. And obviously that's like a distraction. It's clearly more important that they're sort of colluding behind closed doors about something that every single one of those justices, when they were interviewed for their confirmation by the Senate, said that they thought Roe v. Wade was finished law. Every last one of them.
Actually, no. There have been even what was her name before she died?
Ginsburg?
Yeah. Even she had said in an interview that Roe versus the decision made in Roe versus Wade was she would have preferred if it would have been done a different way.
Well, I mean, Roe versus Wade was a 7-2 decision, and normally when Supreme Court cases come up for review, it was because the decision was close. It was a nail biter. It was a difference of one. 7-2 is a strong majority. So to overturn that, you should have to have some urgent, pressing public need.
I am curious what "do it another way" means. I mean, because if I were saying that, I'd probably say in a way that could be less easily challenged, but maybe that's not what was meant by her.
Let me see if I can find the exact quote on it.
Well, it definitely puts the last few years of politics in perspective with, of course, Trump nominating one justice and then the other one basically stealing to nominate it. So the two justices he put there are the two that they needed in order to make, just edge out this victory for the far right, where, this does not reflect what the public wants.
Okay, here's according to the Washington Post, it says Justice Ginsburg thought Roe was the wrong case to settle the abortion issue. That's the way that's been. Let me see here. That's it, but it's based. Let me see. Ginsburg said of the Air Force. No, that's not right. I need to find a better. I need to find a source that just gives me the meat and potatoes of what I'm looking for. So,
that is so hard to find. Like, how many news articles do you encounter where it's like paragraph after paragraph of preamble to set the scene, and you want one bit of info?
Yep, exactly. I wanted her exact quote, but basically she from what I remember reading, she thinks that there was a better way to keep this solid. I don't know what that way is. I don't know if she ever went into what that would be, but she did feel that there could have been a better way.
An amendment, maybe?
Maybe.
A different case.
Now, if the Democrats could come together enough to end the filibuster as we know it, they could have a chance of coming together to push legislation that would make the Roe versus Wade. It would make that whole thing unnecessary. They could make
legislation as opposed to a right enshrined in constitutional law, because at the moment there's no actual legislation passed by Congress guaranteeing a woman's right to an abortion. It's just been decided that the states cannot tell women they can't have abortions. That's what Roe v. Wade was about, as far as my understanding. That's an oversimplification, of course, but I mean, it's my understanding is basically it was more about the states couldn't basically arbitrarily say you can't have an abortion. That was not a right the states had. That I think that's probably why RBG had a problem with it. It was more to do with states' rights as opposed to abortion.
Okay.
Or maybe I'm wrong about that, though. I mean, I'm certainly no expert. And hang on a second. I'm just gonna mute this. Someone else talk.
So
blah 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 blah. Okay.
So I mean, kittens, right?
Yeah.
Kittens. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird. Like, I don't think that we will see the kind of movement we need for something like Roe versus Wade to be solidified until the Democrats can get their heads out of their asses and stop running to the center, which hasn't been working for them. Trying for bipartisanship with people who have said explicitly, we oppose everything you stand for, isn't going to happen. We've got to stop trying to work with people who've already spit in our faces and said no. But
unfortunately,
that's common wisdom. It's what everybody knows, and we never try for something. We always go for this middle of the road garbage that gets us nowhere.
Well, we get people like Manchin that stops any potential progress we could actually make. Oh, well, the Republicans might not like that, so I'm not going to vote for it, is essentially his argument that it's just what it boils down to, really. We've got to, yeah. So he's really gotten in the way of a lot of stuff.
Well, the Republicans have spent like the last, I don't know how many presidencies, just basically going to the Democrats, and it's like, maybe it's time we stopped trying to be nice and polite and getting along. If they're not going to cooperate, it's going to fail. So let's stop trying.
Just as an aside, Kate, when the show is over, I'm going to look back on it and I'm going to count in about 10 and a half minutes, and I'm going to freeze frame this part. And that's going to be on your epitaph.
Well, make like an animated GIF out of it. I'll do it nice and slow so you can get a good, maybe make it cycle.
Anyway, I don't know. I guess I've been so far out of the loop, and I feel kind of bad about it because this is obviously super serious, and the weakness of the Democrats is partly because of their slim majority in both houses, but it's not just that. I think there's a whole bunch of them that aren't really. I think they're too afraid of their constituencies. Basically, they think they think. I think a lot of politicians, and this is where both sides of the argument, on both sides of the aisle. I think a lot of them assume that America is more conservative than it actually is.
Well, there's a couple of reasons, I think, for that. Number one, like I say, the Democrats keep running to the center. And so those of us on the far left who are going, guys, politically homeless over here, votes for you to get, are basically told to shut the fuck up. Right. And it's like really frustrating that happens because we have something to offer and we have like progressive policies we want to push. We have everything people want, but the optics are always wrong or something, or oh, that's not an electable candidate. Well, screw electable. Right now, what we need is a dreamer with attitude, not someone who's going to tread water for 4 years.
So Trevor Noah at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, he was trying to, throw jabs at everyone. He's standing right next to where the president was sitting. And he said, and then we have the most powerful man in the country here, Joe Manchin. That juxtaposition of him standing right next to the president saying that spoke volumes to me. Like, it was a really great joke because every joke has a little bit of truth to it,
Oh, it's not like Biden is actually taking any kind of action. He could do so many wonderful things just with a executive action, is signing his name on, but he won't do it. And it's so frustrating. Well,
I'm not sure as regards this particular issue if that Joe can do anything with an executive action. I think, like Kazum was mentioning earlier, the only way to thwart what the Supreme Court might do would be for them to codify into legislation a woman's right to have an abortion. And, if they have to put like restrictions on what kinds of abortion you can have, or with us a different conversation, you know what I mean? But, something over 70% of abortions are in the first trimester, right? And over 90% of abortions, or 95% of abortions, are before the middle of the second trimester. So, late-term abortions, which all anti-abortionist type people use to sort of scare you into thinking you're basically killing a viable baby, are
that is the problem, isn't it?
And almost only as far as I know, they're only in the case that the woman's life is in jeopardy,
Well, that is part of the problem, though. The right wing has this mental image of, a baby. They never, ever use the word fetus, ever. It's always a baby. Oh, every time.
Well, I personally think it's an undeveloped baby. It's an undeveloped human, but so I don't know.
Look. You know what they're picturing.
Sorry.
But you know what they're picturing? They're picturing an infant, a newborn. Oh, because a fetus looks like something where if it was big and on a spaceship, it'd want to eat your face. But they are cooing over the infants, the newborns, that this thing isn't yet.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think abortion is horrible, but it's necessary. Someone has the right to have something removed from their body, whether it's another living being, another living human being or not. I just think, like, I think maybe I've said this before, but I personally look forward. Well, I probably won't live this long, but I look forward to there being a time when we can have artificial wombs. And then at that point, once artificial wombs are everywhere, then most abortion, it would be reasonable to make most abortions illegal, except, in the cases of if there was a health problem or something, something that there's no other option but an abortion, right? But
artificial wombs. I mean, I think an artificial womb could only function if you put the fertilized egg into it without it having rooted yet. Do you know what I mean?
I don't know. I'm betting there's going to be a way.
I'm not sure I agree with that. I mean, because you can implant like an egg, a fertilized egg for surrogate pregnancy or in vitro or whatever. So, I mean, it doesn't seem like a fetus would be that much more difficult. I mean, if we can create something that it can gestate in at all, we probably have the tech to remove it and reinstall it in one of the sci-fi series I like, call them uterine replicators rather than artificial wombs. And so that's the way I always think of it in my head. But the thing is, I try to ask these pro-lifers whether or not they'd be okay with those being used, and they always duck and dodge away from the question. In fact, anything that might allow a pregnant person to not be pregnant anymore as they choose is something they run away from pretty hard, which makes me suspect it's got nothing to do with the fetus.
I think Kazum is stopping short of where the technology is actually going to go with the artificial womb.
Oh, I think an artificial womb would replace most pregnancies, pretty much.
No. It doesn't need to replace it, like the fact that the pregnancy happens, because what it needs to do is we need to take the artificial womb and put it inside of Kazum. Then we'll have a pregnant man, and then the right won't be able to say that men can't get pregnant.
Kazum doesn't sound very like he likes that very much.
No.
Also, though, I mean, just because we can take a fetus that would have been aborted and bring it to term outside of someone's body doesn't mean that kid's going to be taken care of. Doesn't mean there's going to be, support, food, housing, et cetera, et cetera. Sure. If it's a non-aborted abortion, it's going into the system, this kid.
Right.
So it's going to overburden all of like the social security, social safety net stuff that is involved for orphans and kids without parents. It's going to be a financial disaster in a lot of ways.
Sure. I think we need to.
Zonstar's point. I mean, you'd still be insisting that someone reproduce who doesn't want to, and an artificial womb can't fix that.
Yeah, I'm against the notion of just destroying a life. If we can find any other way than to actually destroy the life, great. To me, we should be focused more on new forms of contraception. We need a male birth control pill, for example. We need things like that. It's important. It should be a priority.
Well, then we have to get past all of the Puritans where they don't care what the birth control, like what form it takes, how it's done. They just don't want you having sex.
And
that is their thing. It's to them, sex is shameful. Sex is bad. Sex is to be avoided if for anything other than procreation, according to these nut bars. Yeah. And so coming up with more contraception isn't going to solve any problem for them and their choice to interfere with other people's births or non-birth reproduction.
Well, that's right. I think I read recently that the state of Missouri is going to make some forms of contraception illegal. And by some forms of contraception, I haven't really looked into it, but I would be willing to bet, based on my experience of life, that some forms are not the ones that men use. They'll be ones women use.
Well, I saw some, I don't know if it's what you were talking about. I saw one state is trying to make IUDs a murder charge.
Wow.
Yeah, a murder charge for these people are psychotic.
And see, that's another reason. It's like they don't even just want to draw the line at birth, and say, to me, Yeah, they don't even want to draw the line at conception. They want to make sure that you can't prevent conception, and that's like, what's the point of that?
The sheer number of times I've been told, oh, the woman gave consent to carry this pregnancy to term and probably take care of the kid for 18 years when she had sex. Like, seriously, 10 minutes of and it shouldn't even be called a mistake, but, an accidental pregnancy because you had a little sex is 18 years of paying for it? I don't fucking think so.
It's not just 18 years, it's a whole life. You never stop being a parent,
I mean, 18 years you're legally obligated. Let's just put it that way.
Sure. Yeah.
All right, screw it. Hashtag someone fund Kate's weed habit, because that thing's done. Just saying.
The arguments in this draft for overturning Roe v. Wade, the problem with the arguments themselves is that you could plug and play these same style arguments for a lot of the other things you guys are talking about. Griswold versus Connecticut, which protects your right to get contraception. That could also be overturned with the exact same logic as this overturning of Roe v. Wade if it were to go through. So you're not off. Like, this will attack a lot of other things that we take for granted as rights in our country. If this draft were just to become the ruling.
And what case are they anticipating to accept in the Supreme Court that they will use to as a vehicle to overturn it with this decision that they seem to have already agreed on, without looking at the case they're going to be agreeing on it on?
I'm not sure about that part.
Okay, I don't really know too well, like the different branches of government and their like what they can influence and what they can. But do we need the Supreme Court for this? I mean, could Congress pass a law of some sort and just not even bother with the court?
Yes, they could.
That's exactly the case. And there's no reason, since Roe is like 50 years old, there's no reason over the past 50 years that hasn't happened yet, other than cowardly Democratic politicians, because this issue has never gone away. It has never, and that the fact that they've been fighting about it ever since the Roe decision happened, and it's never gone away. And I saw some conservative person say on one of the social media sites the other day, he said something along the lines of, we meaning conservative, anti-abortion people, we aren't going to riot in the street. Didn't riot in the streets and have all these demonstrations and blah blah blah. I was like, dude, you got your side bombed how many abortion clinics and killed an abortion doctor in his fucking church? I mean, come on.
And stormed the Capitol as well. I mean, they're the same people. Let's face it, or at least there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah, a Venn diagram would be pretty, pretty tight.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Says,
that it
I'm
is just
going to
going
put
to be the
Marcus's comment up
states.
because it's worthy of discussion here. It's just going to the states, right? It's not an end to abortion unless that's what democracy demands. Democracy shouldn't have any say over whether you get rights or not as a human being.
I'm not sure I agree with that, because there's some people who want rights where I'm like, no, you don't get to beat me up for being a lesbian. You don't have that right. So, I mean, we do have.
They're trying to take away your right there. That's
no, but that, well, no, they're trying to give themselves the right to hit me, right? And I mean, that's the point, is that we don't all agree on what rights are or should be, and which ones should be implemented. So, yeah, democracy should have something to do with it. But also, like a certain amount of,
because according to what democracy should have something to do with, it means that if enough people voted that it's okay to beat up lesbians, then that would be the law.
Well,
see?
Yeah, but I mean,
I don't think that should be the law. No one should have.
Well, I don't think it should be the law either. But at a certain point, there's going to be someone who's going to say, "You're violating my rights with that law," and it may be something where only one side of this conflict can possibly win, like say abortion or something. Because either it's legal or it's not. Either you can get one or you can't. There's really no in between except, well, a coat hanger. And so, I mean, at a certain point, you have to say, look, someone has to step up and make a decision here, because we are butting heads against this thing and there is no reconciling our differences. So what do you do if it's not democracy? Arbitration? I don't think so. You can't just have like an autocrat declare it.
I think that basically all of us as individuals have our a certain number of rights protected in the Bill of Rights. And here comes Joe. Hi, Joe. And I think that any laws that contravene those rights shouldn't be legal. And so it doesn't matter whether, the country votes that it's okay to beat up homosexuals or whatever, for example. It doesn't matter if they vote for that you don't have the right to do that. It's already, your safety is guaranteed from that in the Bill of Rights already.
Well, there's a lot of things that I thought were guaranteed, but they're starting to go away.
I hear you. The Bill of Rights is not as ironclad as I might like it to be. That's for sure. But without it, we'd have literally nothing to guarantee or to stabilize our concept of rights.
But what protects it from other people voting it down, and should it or shouldn't it? I mean, again, this is a document that can be altered by people. This is a decision that can be made by people. There's no way to have rights without people deciding they should have them and are willing to defend them. Rights are not inherent in the universe. And so without democracy, some people could just declare a law that is very unjust to people, or that they feel is very unjust. Right. So at a certain point, it does come down to people have to agree. And what is that if not democracy?
Right. I mean, that's the thing with our system. I mean, what's interesting about the Constitution is that at the one point it establishes our democratic system, but the Bill of Rights is actually intentionally undemocratic. And what I mean by that is that its job is to actually prevent the mob from taking away people's rights and doing that. However, as you say, as we're seeing now, the problem is that the people who wrote the document assumed that people were going to be arguing in good faith. They thought they were going to be people of good conscience, and they were going to really honestly believe that people, the rights of the individual and the rights of the people, which aren't the same thing, that everybody involved would really truly respect that, because that's why they broke away, right? That's why they wanted to be separate from England. So, but of course, when you have a cabal of people there that have an agenda which is actually very anti-individual rights, they basically want to impose their will, and they don't give a fuck what the document says. And it's just like when Trump was in, how many things did Trump do and get away with that we thought were not possible because that document said that they shouldn't be possible? I mean, basically, the only anything where, and to Kate's point, and this is something again, a point of agreement with me and Kate, is that rights are made up, which is good. It's a good thing that we made up rights. It's awesome that we made up rights, but basically, those rights only work when we assent to agree that we're going to accept those rights as real. And once we stop doing that, then we have chaos, and then we have authoritarianism. And this is literally what's happening on the right wing. I mean, it's funny, and this is the thing too with the right wing. This is the reason why they keep accusing the left of authoritarianism. They'll take somebody in the left who basically say, "Stop treating me like shit," as that's authoritarian, because when you call me horrible things, I don't like it. I'm going to tell you to your face I don't like it. That's authoritarianism. Every time they make an accusation, it's an admission, because this is what they're going down that road. They're trying to make it seem like whatever authoritarian bullshit they're doing is at least no worse than what the left is doing, which of course isn't true. Which is why I fucking hate. I mean, leaving parties aside, I don't want to get into that, because we know that's going to be not going to go to a good place. But the idea that both sides are the same bullshit is patently not true. Patently not true.
Kate, in Joe's defense, Kate, it's been a very long time since he's beaten up any lesbians.
I don't never beat up lesbians. I think lesbians.
We don't need a law. He's reformed.
That's right.
Hey,
but
I would like to bring up the comment again, because I think Zonstar makes a good point here that relates to everything we've been talking about. All three of us, or four of us, or five of us now. The Supreme Court is supposed to be the body that will strike down those laws that go against basic rights.
Right.
For instance, the anti-sodomy laws that were struck down and others. But I mean,
Well, supposed to is
so
the
with
operative word.
this is, I'm not sure if it's the first case that would, if it happens, where the Supreme Court would be taking rights away from people. But that's, if it's not the first, then it's the second brick of the wall of, you know, and people normally, I don't like the slippery slope argument normally, but it seems to me that if it's not the first, then we're on that slope.
Well, and the thing is, it's not a fallacy when it's literally a long-term plan of one side. That's the thing, and that's why you heard a lot of commentators talk about if they get away with this, which it looks like they're going to, and because there's not, unfortunately, the system has holes in it. So this is the first step to taking away rights in others. Now, in the past, I don't think there's ever been a case of taking rights away. There have been times of denial of rights, for sure. Like the Dred Scott case is a perfect example of saying that, well, those enslaved Africans, they're not citizens, they're not really people, so you can do whatever the hell you want. But that wasn't taking rights away. It wasn't accepting the rights that people were supposed to have in the first place. But this would be the first time of actually taking a right away, because that's the precedent has been. Again, more freedom, right? Whenever we establish that people have a right, then that's supposed to become the new baseline, and then we're only ever supposed to be granting more rights, not fewer.
And how is it not the government, for the government to step in and say, you don't get to have this medical procedure? They're always whinging about big government. What they mean is get the government out of my business if they're going to lower my profits or something. It's like they only care if they benefit when they start talking about big government. But this is totally big government. This is getting right up in everyone's faces. And like trying to engage them on that, they never will. There are so many things where you bring up a very specific, important point about their position, and they will always duck and dodge and weave in order to not address it. It is so, I wish it was more public when they do that, so that I could show them to the rest of the world, show them to be the fools they are. I
think it's funny when taking note that some of the people on the right will constantly make this argument when it comes to vaccines. Oh, body autonomy, and then they turn around on this, and it's just like, I thought you were for body autonomy.
Right.
Now, on the flip side, the other side has things weird too. They will say body autonomy, but that with abortion, but then we say we don't need body autonomy with the vaccine. So it's kind of weird. Both sides.
I have to stop you there, because you're incorrect.
Because pregnancy is not transmissible.
True. That's true.
And plus, it goes further. No one has had a forcible vaccination because of COVID. They might have lost their job for not getting it, but that's quite different from forcible.
True. That's true.
Well,
I mean, if you're going to get technical about it, yeah.
Yeah.
I saw something on Twitter today where apparently a bunch of anti-vaxxers, I guess in Canada, because I've never seen a Tim Hortons in the United States, want to boycott Tim Hortons because they won't let them in unless they're vaccinated. And I'm sitting there going, okay, so you're going to boycott a place you can't go in anyway. Wow, fight the power.
Yeah. We do have one in New Jersey. Okay. And there's one in Manhattan. But one thing too, I just want to piggyback on what Kate said previously. The other thing that the right wing does that they complain about, except when it's in their favor, judicial activism. How many times have you heard about they complain about judicial? This is the biggest case of judicial activism in the history of the fucking nation. Where basically, I don't like this because my religion says it's bad, and so I'll come up with some cockamamie thing as to why we should be limiting rights. And by the way, again, what the wording on that is very specific to open the door, because it wasn't just the Roe versus Wade. It was also a couple other cases that led to other rights, like gay marriage and the anti-sodomy laws and all those things. So
it could go all the way up back to slavery, Joe. I mean, if they want to establish that states' rights are secondary to the national will or the national rights, then we're done. Do you know what I mean?
As we all know, that the only thing that stops a bad justice with a gavel is a good justice with a gavel.
That's actually not wrong.
Kate, I've got a plan so that they're not all up in our faces with these abortion bans, and that's we need to have better sex education in schools, which a lot of these places have banned, because then they'll know that the quickest way to the uterus is not through the face.
Well, I was having these arguments with someone, like, the whole don't teach our kids sex ed kind of thing because they're not ready for it or whatever. And I kept asking them, have you read the book, Where Did I Come From? It's like this picture book. It's for kids, and it's very cartoonish, so that they're, it's not prurient in any way, and all of that. It took like 6 times asking this fucker, have you read the book, before he said no. And of course it was no, I don't have to read it because I know it's going to be sick and demented. I'm like, dude, I had this book before I was old enough to read it, and my attitude towards sex is pretty fucking healthy, and it's weird the hands off, oh my gosh, that's creepy attitude these people have towards sex. I don't get it.
Well, it's part, in a lot of cases, it's their religion. Religion teaches them that sex is dirty, the human body is evil, and it only should be used for certain things. Although they don't actually live that way, because they keep getting, they're adult. They seem to be at least as much of adulterers as anybody else. They keep getting, it's them and their religious folk that keep getting caught, diddling the children. Again, every time they make an accusation, it's an admission. Remember that. Every time they make an accusation,
they totally project. I wanted to discuss something. It's long gone in the comments, and I'm not going to go and dig for it. But one of our commenters, I can't remember if it was Marcus or Jonah, or it might have been someone else even, but they said something along the lines of that, just handing the abortion decisions to the states is not the end game for these people. The end game is declaring conception. This is my words now. The end game is declaring conception to be the start of human life, and therefore it's murder. Not because at the moment, murder is classed as illegal taking of someone's life, right? Abortion is not murder because it's not illegal. The minute you make it a human life with rights, then it becomes murder. And I think the end game is to legally codify the beginning of a human life with rights, the beginning of rights to be at conception. Go ahead.
One of the things that has bothered the crap out of me about this whole argument is when the right wing makes idiotic, scientifically illiterate claims, and then the left doesn't call them on it. Life doesn't begin at conception. Life, like two living things, combine and begin to change at conception. Life began 14 billion years ago or some shit? Really long time ago, right? And they keep saying life begins at conception, and we let them get away with it. We let them set the stage for us. We concede their point before we even start arguing, and it's fucking bullshit, and we need to stop.
I think it does start at conception. I don't see how someone can argue that it doesn't. The cells are splitting. That's when it's becoming.
But the cells are alive in order to split.
As I've said, I think someone has the right to abort, but I still think it's a living human being. But
the point is, they say life begins. I'm disputing the begins part.
Right. I don't think that's a good argument.
But the fact is that they keep saying it, and if conception or when life begins is their top concern, or at least if they're going to say it is, then we need to call them on it, because it's not true. What
I'm just saying, I don't think
scientifically incorrect.
I don't think attacking it this way, it will be helpful to our side. I just don't think that's going to help.
Why not? It shows the basis of their claim is bullshit.
They are going to firmly believe that life starts at conception. They'll either base it off. They'll have some sort of emotional reasoning for it or whatever. You're not going to be able to win that argument. You'll have to attack it a different way.
Well, you say they. There can be a lot of people, like who have varying degrees of dedication to this prospect. Some of them might be persuadable, and I don't want to give up on that.
Kazum, I want to ask you a question, my friend. What do you think the implications are of declaring a person to have rights from conception?
I don't think someone should have rights until they're born.
But that's what the end game is for these people.
So yes, but I'm just saying, I think it'd be better to attack it and saying we shouldn't have rights until we're born.
Well, here's another problem, though, with what you said while you were arguing with Kate. you said that okay, at conception it's a human being. It's not a being. A blastocyst is not a being. It is a clump of cells. It may eventually become a being, but something that doesn't even have a nervous system yet is not a being.
It's an undeveloped being.
It's not a being. Think of what being is. It's not
a person yet.
It's not a person. A cluster of cells that are not a person.
It's barely even meat.
At a certain point, and basically what the law basically currently says in most places is that there's a certain point when the nervous system starts to function, and at that point is when we basically say, okay, at that point you better have a damn good reason if you're gonna abort, because
all
now
right, Joe, there's a problem with what you're saying, and it's that you're agreeing with me again. Knock it off.
I know. I think the apocalypse is next Tuesday, but that's the thing. There's a certain point where you achieve beinghood because your nervous system is functional.
Self-awareness.
Only makes sense to draw that line at birth, because that's the only thing everybody has in common. You're totally helpless at birth. Human beings are almost unique as animals when it comes to how helpless we are.
I could make an argument that if an unborn human entity is viable outside the womb, I'm going to start saying, yeah, maybe it's a bit hinky. Maybe we should deliver this thing like cesarean, whatever, and figure it out from there, because at that point you are destroying something that may not be able to understand the concept of I think, therefore I am, but is sort of experiencing it, And at that point I'm like, I don't know.
Once you're born as far as I'm concerned, and you have rights, no matter what.
But I mean, and basically, because Kate and I think, again, once again, this is scary, but we're pretty much on the same page, and that's generally in most cases what the laws already say, and this is the reason why sometimes kids, we argued a few weeks ago about when we should, sometimes we should just give them something. And it's like, yeah, but there's times when they argue for something that they already have, as if they don't, and so it's like, yes, you can say yes, we agree, but the problem is what they're doing is it's part of their shtick, it's part of their game to pretend that they don't have things that they already have, so then they can demand more. So you have to push back when they argue for shit that's already the game. Like I remember having a big argument with, you remember Stigma Dane?
Oh yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. I have a picture of him insulting me. It's great.
Yeah. There was one night I was arguing with him, and it was in Blog TV, I think it was. And he literally said, well, I think, I get that there's reasons why you might need to abort, but like once they're viable, it shouldn't be possible. I'm like, that's the fucking law, you moron. That's the fucking law already. That's where we're already at. And he was like, really? Like, yeah, wake the fuck up. This is what we're contending with. Say there's basically two types of right-wingers. There's the idiots who don't know better. And then there's the ones who manipulate the ones who don't. And actually, those second, it's hard to judge which one's worse, because the ones are fucking morons, but then the other ones know better, and they keep doing it anyway because it's easy to manipulate those idiots.
One of the problems, though, is that there are, it's a minority of people, but there are some of the people who have a D by their name who refuse to acknowledge the need for there being something to stop, to put a limit where, like, if the baby would be able to survive outside the womb, you can't abort it. Well, they're not even willing to do that. They're like, no, we're not going to put any restrictions because it'll allow the right wing to do something else.
Name them. You always keep doing this. There's people that do. Name some.
I'll see. I'll look into it.
So
yeah, that's
I
where
want
we
to
always
address something that CRB Vegas said there about because Zoom at least understands how typical lefty arguments against abortion only resonate with typical lefties. Well, that's kind of my point, is I'm thinking that the arguments we've been making don't bloody work. We've been making them for ages, and look where we are now. Maybe it's time for some new arguments. And that was kind of my point. When I was making atheism videos, I wasn't talking to other atheists, or at least trying not to. I was just talking to the general public about how that claim had so many problems with it. And I'm thinking that that's kind of what we got to do, is just publicly ridicule or at least make look silly either the people on the right advocating things or the things they advocate, so that the rest of the public has something to laugh at. I mean, we're talking about folks on the right who maybe don't know better, who are the sheep. Maybe if we start showing them better, they'll start realizing that maybe they're in the wrong place politically. But if we do it where we're going after their leaders and not them, it gives them a safe space to have, like, so a face-saving soft landing. And I think that's actually pretty important. Although I encounter a lot of lefties who are like, nah, stick it to them, which is so weird because that seems like a right-wing attitude to me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but that is my point, is when I say let's go after the notion that life begins at conception, because honestly, it is bullshit, is like something we really should do, because if we keep conceding that point, then they will have an extra tool in their toolbox, and I'd like to take it from them.
Right, and the other thing too, and the absolute best argument that I've heard so far, this is actually from Tracy Harris. I don't know if she got it from somewhere else, but she's where I heard it. Is the concept that we leave unborn children out for a second. There's nowhere in our law that any person is forced to give any part of their body to someone else, or allow another person to use a portion of their body, not even their own children. So you might have a child that's dying, they need a liver. The parents are never ever forced to give up any portion of their liver to save their own child. Yes, you have to feed your child and clothe them and all that crap, but you do not have to give them transfusions. You do not have to give them body parts. None of that. So the idea is, why should it make a difference between a fetus and someone who's born? If once the child's out of the person, that they no longer have to share their blood and their nutrients and everything else, and their organs, why the fuck should it matter when they're inside? If I don't want somebody inside of me using my organs, I should be able to tell them to fuck off, even if they're my own embryos.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
And I think what that does, that basically ignores it bypasses the person. Even if you say okay, that thing in there is a person, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because their rights do not trump the rights of the person carrying them. And that's it in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's the weird thing, is like, you can't even get them to address it in those terms. If you try to get them to talk about someone using someone else's body, that's where they start like talking, consent was given at sex or whatever. It's like, well, that's not in the law anywhere. So show me how that should ever apply. But even if I ignore it, it just seems like they dodge every argument against them. They don't address it directly. And that's getting frustrating.
Well, I'd like to just point out as well that pregnancy is romanticized by lots and lots of people, but typically not by people who are currently pregnant. I mean, even people who want to have a child, that don't necessarily think that pregnancy is all fucking roses and chocolate. You know what I mean? And it's not fun.
I hear too much about swollen ankles and barfing and all of that stuff. I don't ever want to. I mean, I'd make a lousy mom anyway, but still.
Well, this is why too. Anytime I hear them say, "Oh, the miracle of birth," it's not a miracle. Anything that happens, actually, if you count the entire animal kingdom, millions of times a day, it's not a fucking miracle. And
when you give birth, you have this tendency to shit the bed too. It's
right.
not pleasant. Birth is not a pleasant thing.
Hey, look, the miracle of birth, though. I mean, I totally hear what you're saying, and you're not wrong. I want to say that up front. But the miracle of birth is something like this. A woman ovulates but once a month usually, right? And so you can only conceive in that little window of time. And on the other side of it, the man shoots anywhere between 150 to 300 million little sperm warriors, right? Who all go knocking on the door, right? And only one of them is likely to get in. One. And then the things do their little dance with the chromosomes, and the cells start splitting, and any number of things could go wrong. So every time a healthy baby is born, it feels like a miracle, because so many things could have fucked it up.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though. But that's the thing. We live in a probabilistic universe, right? So anything that happens lots is going to happen often. And actually, there's one correction: only one sperm will fertilize the egg. But the idea that only one could is actually false. It's just that the one that gets through.
That's
first,
what I meant. You know, one of them gets through, and then the dance of the chromosomes begins. I mean,
Right.
you know,
I don't know. Aren't there some like either it's weirdly fucked up twins or it's some birth defect or something where like two manage to get through at the same time and like something screwy happens?
It can happen. It's rare, but it can happen. Because you think about, you know, the you know, once the one gets in and then the wall of the ova changes, but yeah, it's not instantaneous. So yeah, on very rare occasion, but it's like, but that's the whole thing. The fact that there's 300 million sperm, that's why it's actually not as uncommon as people think. In fact, how many conceptions happen that don't result in a pregnancy? Because
Quite a lot.
Conception is, you know, sperm penetrates ovum, and they do their thing. And you know, the dance of the genes. You know, Paul was saying, but until it implants in the uterus, there's no pregnancy. And that's the thing. What's kind of funny about like the RU46 and all this kind of stuff. And they're like, oh, it's the abortion pill. No, it's not. It prevents impregnation. So technically speaking, that person is never actually pregnant because the little thing goes and it just hits the walls of the uterus and bounces off and doesn't implant because it's not ready to receive.
But you know, that's not the part they care about. I mean, even if we assume that they argue in good faith, the part they care about is that fertilized egg. The fact that it deliberately didn't implant is to them murder, obviously. But that's, you know, what they say. Obviously, it's more about like controlling women and making people not have sex. But like I said, if we take them at their word.
Right. Well, it's amazing, though, how they don't have a problem of that, you know, the born person dying from malnutrition or from, you know, abuse, you know, actually physical abuse. There's so many things, or because they couldn't get medication, or a whole number of things that they're not willing to pay for. So all life is sacred and all life is precious until you're born, basically. And at that point, they couldn't give a fuck about you. And that's the thing that pisses me off the most, because at least if they were consistent, if they said, okay, yes, we know it's a hardship to be pregnant, but we really think it's important that life is so precious, and that once it's here and we're going to give you postnatal care and we're going to care for the child and make sure it gets food and adequate water and housing and shelter and heat and all that kind of stuff. But they don't want to do, most of them don't want to do any of that. And that belies the whole idea that they actually think life is sacred. And that shows what, you know, what Kate just said, that it's really about control. Because if in fact, it's funny, my friend Todd's Catholic, and he's against abortion. However, when we have a lot of conversations, he would rather have somebody abort a child that they can't take care of than have the child suffer in a bad life. And so for him, and he always reminds, because there's that one day a year where the right wing pretends they give a shit about babies. He actually posts on his Facebook page, if you're not for postnatal care, then you're not pro-life. If you're for the death penalty, you're not pro-life. It just goes down the list of all these things. If you actually think that life is sacred, you would actually believe and you would actually do. And so at least for him, he lives it, and and he understands that his feelings should not be the law. So that's the best I can ever ask for somebody who has that belief. But at least he's there.
There was a comic I saw that was going around for a while that I think describes a right-wing attitude that applies to this situation, even though the comic was about something else. It was about like trans kids, and the whole, like, it was these two women arguing. One's like, look, all these kids are transitioning because it's trendy, and then it fucks up their whole life, and the other woman's pointing out how statistically rare that is. And then she asks, how many trans kids are you willing to sacrifice to prevent that one from making a mistake? And the woman says, all of them. I'm willing to prevent all of you from doing what you should be doing that makes your life better because of one kid. And it's the same thing with abortion. And all of that is like, well, we have to take away your right to be to have abortion, to have reproductive freedom, because there might be one like instance where it's that really we needed this kid, it's like the next Gandhi or some shit. And of course, pointing out to them, what if it's the next Hitler doesn't help.
Bingo.
I hear that.
And what this makes me think about is just the people who probably shouldn't be having kids are having tons of them, and then the people who probably should be having kids, the ones that are smarter about just their attitude, and the ones that would probably make great parents aren't having kids. So
okay, I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole, Kazoom, because you'd make a great father. Anyway, I just want to bring up this comment by Vegas because this is a whole thing. Lefties move to lefty states, as if conservatives don't get abortions. I mean, my goodness, as if people in Texas don't need abortions, as if people in Mississippi don't need abortions, as if, really, wow.
Well, but the thing is, I half suspect, well, maybe more than half, that this country might be far too gone, too divided. I think it's possible that we cannot save this country, the United States. We might have to be the disunited states because the moral and ethical and just ideological divide, I think, is too great. Plus the right wing. Now I've seen video clips of them saying, look, it doesn't matter what the other side proposes. We oppose it no matter what, automatically. And literally the words were, that's just common sense. And everyone in the video call started nodding. I don't think that we can reunite this country just because too many people are trying to keep it divided. I think we need to split up. I don't see what else we can do. And of course, everyone says, well, what about all the people in the wrong color state? And I'm like, you know what? That's the same argument of how many people will you sacrifice to save one?
Well, and the thing is to answer Vegas. I get it because Vegas is libertarian, but this is the same bullshit libertarian argument I hear as to why it should be okay to discriminate against people in the workplace, because you can just go somewhere else. Well, not everybody can. In fact, most people can't, and so this is the problem. We don't have. Not everybody has the ability, usually for financial reasons, to just pick up and go somewhere else.
Even if it was free and convenient, partitioning does not have a great history. I mean, look at India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, right? Pakistan and India still contest Kashmir to this day, and they're technically in a state of war. You know what I mean? Partitioning on ideology, I don't think is ever a good idea.
Well, okay, here's one of the things, though, is I think both sides would probably be happy to live without the other. I suspect the left and the right would be really happy if the other side would mind their own damn business. And I was about to address that. How about stand your ground? How well is that working for us? I mean, seriously, the divide keeps getting greater and greater. We can stand our ground all we like, but unless there's enough unity to oppose the right, which we need to do, plus the will to oppose the right, which we don't see a lot out of the left, I don't think that we can heal this country. I really don't.
Yeah, Vegas, you may not think there's going to be outright ban in most places, but you're wrong. I mean, there's somebody said 20, I think it's 18, but however many states it is, there's already a bunch of states that have laws on the books that if because obviously this decision has not been announced, so it's not official. But if it does become official, and that's not guaranteed, it's just extremely likely. That there's trigger laws that are written that says, and if at any point Roe versus Wade is no longer precedent, then these laws banning it go into effect. So you're wrong, because we already know this. There's at least some states that already have the law set up and ready to go. The legislature doesn't have to do anything.
And to what the Green Mission, how the heck do you have two thes there? To what you're saying there, you stand your ground because if you run away to somewhere else, sooner or later, they'll be chasing you out of your new home as well. The difference being that if we had two completely different countries, not states within the country, they'd still have to cross the border to come after us. So, I mean, it may work, it may not for them, but it's not necessarily like the case that if we let them have Jesus land, that they will then start going a conquering after. In fact, a lot of people I know think that if they had their own right-wing bubble, that it would fail pretty quickly. So
I suspect it would. And this is something else actually something that Paul just replied to in the chat that I think is important. Because again, it's another one of those bullshit arguments they make. Because whenever happened to me yesterday, I was basically telling this person why they were wrong on abortion. And then what did he bring up? Late term abortion. Because he's like talking about infanticide. It's like abortion is an infanticide. And then he brings up late term abortion. Like, yeah, something that happens doesn't even necessarily happen every year, and when it does, it's like literally a few, and it's only because the mother's life is in jeopardy or her long-term health is in jeopardy. So basically, again, it's about sacrificing. You're basically saying you're willing to sacrifice those women because you don't want the infant to to be killed. Well, but it's not an honest argument, because almost all abortions are not late-term abortions.
So to what the Green Machine there is saying that they'll cross the border, they'll say this was part of our country before, we want it back. Well, the big difference is that then they'll have to actually fight for it, like as in physically, as in war, where now we're having a political fight. It's different. So I don't accept that they will just cross the border. It's not that simple. It really isn't.
The thing I want to say about abortions, and I'm not the first person or even the millionth person to make this point, but I mean, like, just because if abortion eventually is made effectively illegal in some or all states, obviously won't prevent abortions from happening. People will still terminate their pregnancies if they are unwanted. And I mean, I find it very frustrating that the anti-abortion side of the argument doesn't seem to accept that this is not going to stop abortions. It'll just criminalize people and make it less safe. And if you really believe abortion is awful, then you should be advocating for, and then to quote Bill Clinton, which I don't normally ever do, you should try to think of making abortion safe, legal, and rare.
So again, to what Green Machine is saying there, they're the ones hoarding the guns. It's not the same. I mean, even if they want to form these little militias and try to come after us, it's going to be pretty pathetic. They're going to have to actually organize into a proper military. It's not it's not some dude, survivalist guy in a cabin with like 34 assault rifles. He wouldn't be the one coming after us, or if he was, he'd be doing it on his own. And I mean, again, if it's like a lot of us agree that if they have their red state, Jesus land, their own country, it'll be in like the Midwest, in the flyover states. But I mean, I'm living in San Diego right now. We have a fairly decent military base here, and like there's other places around the country. I know Seattle has like some military bases. So it's not like these people in the middle of the country are really prepared to try to take over the blue parts. And besides, if they have their own little paradise, and if it turns out to be a paradise, how likely are they to really try to cross the border? And even if it turns out to be likely, so what? I mean, this sounds like can't win, don't try to me. And I'm not down with that either. I'm not going to give in to fear if we can possibly make something better, which is kind of why I refuse to vote for Biden. But you know what I mean. Let's
not go down that road today. Paul, so I'm going to take issue with one thing you said. I agree with safe and legal. Rare, bullshit. I don't care how many abortions there are, because it's none of anybody's fucking business. You're muted, Paul.
I didn't say I think it should be rare. I think what I said is I think the people who are anti-abortion should be arguing for it to be safe, legal, and rare, because you can't get rid of it. So the most strict you can argue for is rare.
Oh, I got you. Okay, I got you. Okay, that's fair enough. Yeah, I walked away. I missed the first part of what you said. So
Green Machine, I wasn't saying stand your ground does not equal can't win, don't try. I'm saying not attempting to have two nations is can't win, don't try. I mean, if we don't do it because of the fears you're bringing up, that's can't win, don't try. If we come up with like more practical, like logistical reasons we can't do it, that's a conversation I'll have. But if it might not succeed because the other side is a bunch of nut bars, I'm not prepared to accept that.
Okay, Kay, I have a possibly convincing argument for why you shouldn't consider this a good idea.
All right.
The first person to bring this idea up on the Breakfast Club was Brock Lawley.
Okay. So
Yeah, but
I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, there's a meme that goes around all the time where it has like this blue section, the United States of Canada, and in the middle, Jesus land. I mean, a lot of people have come up with this idea, and it's not just Brock.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, now again, I would say that I think that the logistical problems would be too insurmountable. How that said, but to Kate's earlier point, I mean, as far as them failing, I mean, all one has to do is look at what states are taker states and what states are giver states. And while there's a few red blue states that are taker states, the vast majority of the taker states are red states, and to the tune of like about 1.5, they get back 1.5 to what they put in. Texas is like the best taker state. They're like 1.1. That's the best. And the rest are all worse. And then like Alabama and Mississippi are like 2-1. So basically, all their shit can only survive if they're getting money from us evil, horrible liberals. So I'd love to see them fucking crash and burn, because that's exactly what would happen. And it wouldn't take, that's the irony, because they would love to have some big military and they wouldn't even be able to keep the fucking roads paved. So
and California has the 5th largest economy in the world. Without that, they're pretty fucked.
Exactly. So between California, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Illinois, that's a huge portion of the not only the population, but a huge portion of the economy, and disproportionately higher percentage of the economy than the percentage population of the people. Without that, their economy would fucking die in a heartbeat. So that's why whenever I hear like right wingers talk about separatism, I'm like, hey, you guys want to split off Montana and Idaho and a few other states? Be my guest. Because I challenged them. I said, hey, look, if you want to show me that your way works and you want to form a little court in there and you're going to build, a libertarian land and it's going to be this great thing of freedom and money and everyone's going to be rich and happy, show me it work. Show me it work. And who knows, maybe you'll convince me. But of course, we know it won't work because it can't. And Kansas actually tried that, and it was a fucking abject disaster. So,
Well, to what Duckzilla is saying there, I don't say you get hundreds of thousands of people to just up and leave. I'm not saying that we get them to up and leave, but at the same time, if we say, well, we can't because of those poor people in Austin, we would be sacrificing a whole huge portion of the country because of a city. I don't think we can justify that. I think we would have to break a few eggs to make a better omelet. I mean, what else can you do when like 1/2 of the country is just completely mulish, digging their heels in until they get their way? What do you do with that? If we're just going to sit there and hope everyone starts voting for people who actually have a certain amount of passion and stand for something that's a bit more progressive, if we just sit around hoping for that and apparently not fucking voting for that, it's never going to get better. So, we have to actually we have to do something. And it seems like the political solution isn't working. And maybe if we change tactics, it might. But I don't trust people to be that smart. So we might need to have 2 countries. And it may turn out that there are people who are living in a red state who are fucked. But what else can you do?
Well, if they're fucked, at least right now, they're fucked with equal rights. Right. Under the law. If you allow the two country thing to develop, people who are the minority viewpoint in their state could become second-class citizens.
Right now we're allowing
why not to do it.
But right now we're allowing the right wing to dictate to everybody all of these, like, you can't do this, you can't do that, because it's what we believe. It's like, and we believe it because it's God, which isn't supposed to have any part in our government. Okay, so they have a whole bunch of equal rights that are slowly being eroded. So, again, I ask, what do you do?
Well, I don't know, but I think what you don't do is split the country up because, to your point, Kate, and to Duckzilla's point there, if you're in some cities are predominantly liberal, but the state is overall conservative. Are those people basically, I personally wouldn't want to be one of the people living in a city in my state where they said, sorry, you're fucked. And the people that you hate are going to make all your laws, and there's nothing you can do about it because you're not an equal citizen anymore. You know,
but they're already starting to make our laws. They're already trying to make people not equal.
At least we have a system right now that protects us insofar as we have a methodology.
One that's clearly not working.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a system that's clearly not working.
I like it too. I agree with you, but this, and if you were here suggesting that we should come up with a second constitutional convention or something like that, I think that's worthy of consideration, right? Because,
but my point was, I think we're too far gone. I think the divide is too great and it cannot be healed. I really, truly believe that.
I absolutely can't accept from at all that these divisions can't be healed.
Why not?
Well, I simply think that in order for a fire to go out, you first have to stop stoking it.
I mean,
I don't even know what you mean by that in this particular situation.
At worst case, we could end up being in some sort of a civil war. But after that's over, after the turmoil, whatever it happens to be, maybe it won't actually be a civil war. Maybe it'll just be this period of massive turmoil. But after that turmoil, there should be a bit of a calm.
But what if it's the wrong calm? What if it's a right-wing calm where everybody has their rights taken away?
Right, which is why
well, let's hope not. But I ask, what if?
That's exactly why we shouldn't split things up.
Well, all right. Well, see, here's what I have to say. I mean, so to Kate, because Kate is asking a very important and valid question. Well, what do you do? So the important thing is to look at how we get here. So we'll look at what the right wing did. I'm not going to talk about what the left did or didn't do because that's just going to bring arguments. But what the right wing did do is that the right wing, this has been a long-term 60-year plan. Now, I don't want to wait 60 years. So before anyone goes down that line, but but the most important thing is that they did is they got people, not just, they didn't just focus on the president or even on Congress. They went for, let's get people in the local offices, let's get them in the state offices, and let's get them in the governor's mansion, because I think we're all concerned about right-wing gerrymandering, right? I think we all are. And the way they do that is because they control the state houses, they control the governor's mansion in those states. So all the people, there's so many times I run into people that are rightfully angry about gerrymandering, and they keep looking to Congress, but that's not something that's in Congress's purview to do anything about, because the states determine the districts the way they do them. The states do that, and the only way you can knock down what the legislature does is the courts. But again, what did they do? They got control of the courts in the states and at the federal level. So then basically they get to gerrymander any way they want. So the only way to take that back, undo that, is to build that grassroots, get people as progressive as possible into local offices and into state offices, to where you can control the message and where you can control the districting and all that kind of stuff, and then build up from that. Now we need, now I'm not saying ignore the presidency, I'm not saying ignore Congress, because obviously that would be ridiculous. But in addition to that, that can't be the only thing we focus on. We can't, and for too long, our side has not built that grassroots effort in the same way they have. It's just
but our side keeps nominating these milquetoast, do nothing, tread water, middle of the road butt munches, instead of someone who actually wants to get something done, and someone who has an agenda. And it's always, we have to be bipartisan, blah, 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 blah. The left needs to stop being the nice guy. It doesn't work. We've been trying it over and over and over. At what point do we start to say that it's at insanity levels? Because we keep trying it and it keeps not working. We keep expecting a different result. When do we start getting people fired up, and not just the voters, but even when do we start nominating politicians who aren't safe? Because it seems like the Democrats have been waiting and waiting for a time. Well, hold on. I'm not fucking done. And you've talked for like 10 minutes, so give me a chance. And now I lost my place because my short-term memory is garbage. Please don't do that. What was I saying?
Stop getting milquetoast people and get people that are fired up.
But what was the last thing I said? Because I don't remember. I'm sorry. Seriously, like I'm no shit brain damage and my short-term memory is garbage. What was I saying?
I can't quote you. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, I guess part of the problem is that, oh, right, it seems like the Democrats are waiting for this safe moment when if we lose after taking a risk, the Republicans can't do that much damage. Well, I'm sorry, but if that time ever existed, it never will again. I mean, that's the thing, is a lot of where I'm coming from is just based on the fact that the Republicans have dug in their heels. They will oppose everything. And so we have to get tough. But I can't get anyone on the left to adopt that attitude. And it's beyond frustrating.
I agree that we need to get tough. It's a question of how to do that. I hear people, and I'm not accusing you of this, Kate, by any stretch, but I do hear people sometimes on the left saying that we should be using the same, basically breaking the rules in order to preserve the rules. Is the shortest hand way I can say it. You know what I mean? Because they say, well, the Republicans don't care about the rules, so why should we? Well, I mean, precisely because the rules matter, and we need to get the Republicans to obey them again. Not, you know.
Okay.
That's
Wait,
ourselves artificially.
No, but here's the thing. It is not. We don't have to break the rules to do it. But here's the thing. Here's the problem. So to answer Kate's question, the problem is, Kate, is that when the primaries, this is why you nominated, because the nominations happen. People run in the primaries. You know, you participated. You were involved. And I applaud you, because unlike a lot of people, you don't just say the shit. You go out there and you do it, and that's important. But you know what? The turnout in the general election is generally between 50 and 65%, depending on the election cycle. The turnout in primaries is 15%. 15. So if there's really a lot of people out there that believe in progressive ideals, if they actually went and fucking showed up on primary day, we would have that, because it wouldn't matter what the DNC wanted.
Okay, but it would be nice if they would stop pulling a bunch of bullshit like Obama behind the scenes, making a bunch of phone calls to get Klobuchar and freaking Mayor Pete to drop it out. That sure would have been nice. That sure would have been. But see, that's the thing, is we were talking about how people are constantly breaking the rules. And if we refuse to break them too, if we refuse to adopt those new rules as the new rules, we're going to keep losing, because we're tying one hand behind our back constantly.
If the turnout wasn't 15%, then none of those shenanigans would have mattered.
Listen,
but they didn't turn out, did they? And they ended up mattering, didn't they?
Right. So that means there's a lot of people who support progressive ideas who couldn't be arsed to go fucking vote.
I'll just say that it's shenanigans that keep it low at 15%, because people don't feel like, you know, when they do show up, that it matters, because they
people
still
are
get
lazy.
fucked in the ass.
People are lazy.
But it's not just lazy, though. I mean, I also have very little confidence in the system. This is why I haven't voted Democrat in ages. It's always been Green Party or Progressive or whatever. Someone who actually agrees with me ideologically, at least enough for me to have some confidence in them. Unfortunately, sometimes it turns out that they were full of shit. I'm looking at you, Tulsi Gabbard. But even so, though, I would really like to have someone I want to vote for, not someone I'm like voting. I'm sick of lesser evils where I'm voting against the other party instead of for mine. But I don't think we can actually get the voters to get their heads out of their asses. There's too many of them, and too many of them have swallowed the Kool-Aid of conventional wisdom, what is or isn't possible in an election. Like, we always have to go for the safe candidate. No, we fucking don't. Maybe that's why people aren't voting, is because all we get is bland.
But see, the thing is,
dude, I haven't been interrupting you. I've been very respectful, and you talk forever. So,
oh my God, dude, you've been talking this whole time.
Well, no one's so abused. You have any idea how many times I've been sitting here waiting my turn patiently, and then you constantly talk over me? Think about it. Think about it.
35% to 50% of the people who vote in the general election actually showed up during the primaries as well.
Yeah, and ask yourself, why is my question. Why didn't they show up? And it's not just because they're lazy.
Then why do they bother in the general election if they didn't bother in the fucking primary?
Well, because the general election is sexier, and you know that's why.
Well, then again, that means they're stupid then, because they're.
I'm not arguing with you whether or not they're stupid. I'm saying they are stupid because they keep voting the same way, and it keeps biting them in the ass.
Well, the thing is, right? I mean, essentially, I tend to come down on the same side as Kate insofar as I think that politicians who we already have should be bolder. You know. I think that is a given, and unfortunately, like I said before, but with the slim majorities in both houses of Congress, we're kind of almost neutered, and that's not a good place to be in, with what's happening on the right bearing down on us like a fucking avalanche, right? So it's any kind of and this is not necessarily peacemaking as such, but I mean, we need to concentrate on what we need to do looking forward rather than relitigating what happened before. You know what I mean? And that's true about politics in general, but it's also very true about this abortion issue that we started out talking about. Because unless good people become active, the bad people are already active and will win the day. That's
I think
the short of it.
One of the reasons that people aren't active is because the politicians are garbage. They're bland nobodies. They're do-nothings. Maybe people would actually get out to vote if there was someone they liked out there on that stage.
But it's
I hear you.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, though, Kate.
That's exactly my point.
Well, right. So if I do nothing, I get bland politicians, and then I do nothing because the politicians are bland.
No. If I get bland politicians, I do nothing.
But
if I get good politicians, then I'll go out there and vote for them. And yes, I know the reason they're getting lousy politicians is because they're not going out to the primary. But the people who are going to the primary are voting like chowderheads.
Well, right, but then you have to overcome them by showing up in bigger numbers. That's how the system works.
But it's not going to happen until they have someone they're passionate about. That's the problem.
Well, then why aren't there more passionate people trying to run? I mean, here's the thing. Like Occupy Wall Street, right? I think you were on board with that, right? Am I incorrect? I think you're on.
It's been way too long, and I don't even remember.
Okay, right, but it happened, and I think most of us here were on board with it to one degree or another. Okay, so there were some people in that I can't name them because it's been a long time, as you said, but there were some people that kind of rose to the top and like were really good at organizing people, really good at getting people out. We're all around the country. We saw everywhere, all the marches, all the sit-ins, and it was pretty amazing. And I actually was mad because there were people in my generation that were like attacking the millennials doing that. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? You guys were complaining they're not doing anything. They're out there fucking busting their asses and getting their heads beat in by fucking police and getting pepper sprayed. They're actually doing something. If Occupy Wall Street had got turned into Occupy Congress and Occupy the state houses, and if those people who clearly had a good message that people liked, the progressive message, and they had leadership skills, if any of them had gone into politics, then we would have had that. But we only get to vote for the people who step up. And so if shitty people step up and nobody good steps up, what are we going to do?
2 words for you: Bernie Sanders, and they still didn't vote for him. So I do not accept your premise.
Yeah, 13% showed up for him. So that's my whole point. Is that again? So there was a great guy to vote for, and even then, people didn't bother for whatever reason.
But
I don't know why they didn't.
That was the shenanigans, though. That was Obama's little phone calls to get 2 people to drop out, so that the people who supported them united under Biden, the vote wasn't divided. That was the thing that made Bernie fail. If Klobuchar and Mayor Pete had stayed in, we'd have President Bernie right now.
That didn't stop all the people who wanted Bernie but didn't bother to go vote in the primary from voting.
So what? That has nothing to do with what I just said.
It would have changed the outcome.
Well, maybe it would have.
We don't know what the outcome would have been.
But the thing is, I think that you are fighting against an immovable tide if you're trying to get like millions of people to actually get up and do shit. I think you have to change the politicians before you'll ever get the voters to change.
You're never going to change the politicians if you don't get people to push this way.
I would like to actually change the subject because we're relitigating conversations we've had on this channel numerous times. And I would like to change the subject if that's all right.
I heard 2 good segues.
I'm gonna hold my breath until the air around me gets better.
I heard 2 good segues. We had you talking about the end game of Republicans, which Joe didn't turn into his review of the Marvel movie. And we also heard Kate talking during the birth and death. She said shit the bed, and that did not turn into heard in depth.
Well,
so that was a good segue.
When I said shit the bed, I meant it completely literally. When you give birth, your bowels empty out.
No, heard literally shit Deb's bed. Literally.
I said shit the bed, literally.
Yes, she literally shit his bed.
The hell are you talking about? I'm lost.
Amber.
Oh, see, I missed that context. That's why.
Yeah, I only vaguely remember
Birth
it.
and death, herd and depth. That was a perfect segue that we missed there.
I
did
have
not make that connection at all. So
Yeah, I have not been paying attention to that trial at all.
How do you feel about the DHS Disinformation Board?
I don't know anything about it.
You don't know anything about it? The Biden administration has put this board that is going to try to stop disinformation online, and they hired a somewhat partisan person named Nina Jankowicz as the head, and she's very partisan, and she's the main one to head it. And this kind of seems like it was a response to Elon Musk buying Twitter, but I don't know for sure. But there's been a lot of fear from people because of that sale.
I would like to find out in what way this person is meant to be too partisan. What does that mean in this context?
Well, she's
right or left wing. Start there.
Let me see if I can get it just all of her. She's made there's a number of videos featuring her, and the things that she says shows that she is not in the middle.
Good.
She is very much on the left, and the things that she complains about are it seems like she's going to want to stop speech from the right if she just doesn't like it, and it's worrisome.
Not to me.
No.
Because you know what?
Do you think we should get rid of the First Amendment?
Well, I mean, then they can always turn it around on us later. So maybe don't open this door.
So here's the thing. So again, because you have this tendency to misinterpret almost everything, having a board that says, "Hey, we found this particular information to be incorrect or inaccurate," that doesn't take away anybody's free speech.
If it just stays there, then you're right. If it just stays there, then you're right. But we don't know what it's going to be yet. We don't.
Even then, what if they flag something as misinformation when it's completely freaking true? Where's the transparency?
Yeah.
Who watches the Watchmen?
Presumably, they have to say what the justification is. I would think. But again, like, so what? I mean, basically, anybody that would about there's all sorts of fact check sites already, and that people say, oh, this fact check site is biased or not, whether they are or not, I don't know. But what's the difference? So
I mean,
as long as they're not literally stopping someone from speaking, then the free speech is not affected.
Okay, that's true. But if they do have the power to take things down, then that could very much present a problem.
Really, I think there's a much more subtle problem here, and that's public manipulation by declaring one thing true and another thing not. I mean, unless we assume that they're going to be acting in good faith, this is a really easy way to propagandize people.
Very poor assumption, because the last time I remember a government agency publicly saying that a fact was not so, that was the CDC originally saying that masks don't work, so that they could get more masks purchased for hospitals.
Right.
And then they came out and said, "Oh yeah, we only said that to keep down demand so that we could buy it up for hospitals." But then how are we to trust them ever again? Because that could have saved personal lives that didn't use the mask.
Right, but in the long run would have killed a lot more people if they didn't say that. Because
I'm sorry, I don't think the government should lie for our own good. I mean,
I'll go ahead and say the lie might have killed more people, because a lot of people on the right don't trust the CDC anymore.
They didn't trust it before, though.
They have reason to not now, because they can see them admitting to lying.
Fair.
I think the point Kazum's sort of making is it kind of comes across like a ministry of truth. Is that a fair comment, Kazum?
You're muted, Kazum.
You're muted.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people are labeling it as a ministry of truth. And I don't know whether that's truly going to be what it is, but I do have concern. Like Nina Jankowicz at one point was saying that it's a matter of it's a threat to national security if someone tries to make the claim that Kamala Harris slept her way to the top. Now, that's not a true statement, but she makes it sound like it's a threat to our national security, and that's
It
kind of
could be,
weird.
actually, it could be.
Well, the part I really dislike is how now sites like Facebook can label any damn thing misinformation, especially about COVID. And it's like, I didn't need to know that this meme that was meant as humor is misinformation. Fuck off. You know, it just, they take it so far to the point where I feel like I'm being managed, and I don't like it.
Well, if you're on Facebook, you're being managed. I mean, that's been the case.
But above and beyond, come on. You know what the frick I meant.
No, I mean, literally, I mean, remember, Facebook is a profit generating organization, and their whole purpose is to manipulate people to make money. So,
yes, but I'm talking politically. Come on.
Yeah, and politically as well. Yes, absolutely.
Well, okay, but right now I'm focusing on the political part. Okay.
Fine, but I'm just saying that's not new, and that's which is part
of.
No,
but here's the thing: is it is in our face though. The fact that they're announcing their censorship is new.
They've knocked things down even before they had this announcement. So I guess it doesn't seem like it's new.
No, but I mean, my point is that they are like they're even flagging humor as false information as if it's not humor, and it's very frustrating that they do that because like I keep getting warnings if I post a meme, you know, and once I posted it, it has a little disclaimer on it. I don't like that shit. You know, I mean, it's okay to fact check it after the fact, but don't go just saying, oh, this is about COVID. We have to put a warning on it about whether it's true or not. It's just, it feels a little too blatant and in your face, like they're editing everything you see.
For those of us who've been on the internet for long periods of time, I know most of you, like myself, I've been on for 25 years, and so we can remember a wild west period during the internet where there was almost no regulation whatsoever, and you could get away with saying and doing pretty much whatever you liked, right? And I think there's an uncomfortableness with any kind of what perception to censorship or but when it comes to misinformation, social media has enabled something which never existed before. And I don't necessarily think we could have honestly predicted before the internet was here, which is that, you know, hostile actors, both foreign and domestic, can use the tools of these methods for very, very bad means. I mean, our whole culture, to me right now, seems to be the hostage of the internet, you know, and I don't like that. You know,
but again, as far as political purposes, think about what you're doing, Cambridge Analytica. That was where other entities used Facebook. It wasn't Facebook themselves doing it, but they used the tools of Facebook to manipulate people in a political way. You know, but the thing is, again, it's not new. It's easier to do because it's online. But newspapers, TV stations, I mean, since media has existed, there's that's not new. Well, it's just that this tool is very efficient at that.
Yeah.
More efficient than the others.
I mean, you look back, National Enquirer, the Sun.
Not even trying to hide it. If they're not even bothering to be covert about it. They're just right in our faces. We are editing what you see, and it's just that brazenness is part of what bugs me.
I mean, that's fine if you don't like it. I mean, I actually prefer it out. Maybe it's because I'm from New Jersey. I prefer it out front rather than, because at least I know you're trying to manipulate me, as opposed to when it's done surreptitiously, and then you're more likely to actually manipulate me if I don't know you're manipulating me.
Oh, I was just
Facebook.
I was just mentioning, you know, in the past, you think about the National Enquirer and the what is it, the Sun or whatever, all these stupid tabloid stuff, disinformation, misinformation, but yeah. So
you know, the best tabloid I ever saw, the best tabloid headline I ever saw was World War II's best kept secret: Hitler was a woman. I know, right?
Oh, that's hilarious. But see, but to what you originally said though, Kazuma, about, you know, that she's partisan. I mean, it's a government function. I mean, this is what happens. Any administration, left, right, center, wherever, when they get in there and they appoint people and they're partisan. and that's no different. If you want, if anything, the right wing has even been more partisan than normal.
Do we want partisan? Like, for instance, do we want partisan Supreme Court justices? No, we want people that are as in the middle as we can get, and that's what we want out of someone that's going to be trying to find disinformation. We don't want them to be partisan.
Right,
but unfortunately, when the boots hit the ground, partisan is all you get. I mean, it's great to think that there can be Supreme Court justices who are completely neutral, but that's very ivory tower. It's not going to happen.
I agree with Kate on that. Again, another agreement. Oh my God! But think about the Dred Scott decision. Now think of it now. Of course, that was partisan because you had justices, instead of looking at what the Constitution actually said, nah, those people in bondage, yeah, they're not citizens, even though they were born here, and they don't have any rights, even though the Constitution doesn't specify. It usually doesn't say citizen. It usually just says the people. And so like, even if you're a visitor from another country, most of the Bill of Rights applies to you too while you're here. But somehow they carved out this exception because Negroes. Basically, that's what it came down to, because some partisan bigots decided that they didn't want that to happen. So they just decided otherwise. So that's not new. And I guess ideally I would love it for it to be, well, and even not in the middle, because middle and center are not the same thing. And actually, I don't even care about that. I want them to be accurate. I want them to follow what the Constitution says utmost. And then if the law doesn't violate the Constitution, then go by the law. That's what they're supposed to do. But they don't, and they never truly have.
Aren't they basically hopscotching over all of the checks and balances when they strike down like Roe versus Wade or anything else? Because it seems like they're legislating from the bench half the time.
Well, I mean, that their job, their function is to not be a blank check and not be a backup of the legislature. They're there to interpret the law and compare it to the Constitution, so that this way somebody can write a law that says people named Kate get punched in the face every Tuesday. But you know what? Kate has a constitutional right not to get punched in the face every Tuesday, and so they're supposed to say, "Fuck that law. We don't care how many people voted for that law. The Constitution protects Kate's rights."
Right.
So we can't. So fuck the law. This law is bullshit. We can't. No punching Kate in the face.
Okay, but again, that didn't really address what I was saying.
Well, see, the thing is, there are no checks and balances on the Supreme Court.
Right, and they're hopscotching over that whole process, which probably shouldn't be something the Supreme Court can do. And in fact, I think it isn't something they can do. But it clearly is something they can do. It's not something they should be able to do. I mean, like I said, it feels like they're legislating from the bench. They're saying, okay, we're going to strike down Roe versus Wade without ever stopping at Congress or the Senate or the House or the Senate. You know what I mean?
Well, striking down a law is not, well, it's two things. Yes, they are legislating from the bench with this ruling, but the fact that they strike things down is not legislating from the bench, because that's their whole thing, is they're there to keep the legislature and the executive in check. So they're supposed to be the final arbiter of the laws and the Constitution. However, when you have partisan people that basically don't care about what the Constitution actually says, or don't care about legal precedent and all that, so there is no process for them to circumnavigate. They are the final arbiter. And so when you have people who are not of good faith in that position, it's dangerous.
I don't know. It still seems like leaving this up to the Supreme Court is the wrong move somehow. I think what it is there's too few people making the decision. So it's clearly not a consensus of the country.
I hear that, but at the same time, I mean, the Supreme Court, from a functional, co-equal branch of government argument, it has to be that way. They have to be the buck has to stop somewhere, otherwise it'll go in circles.
Well, I thought that's what voting was for, but all right.
No,
I mean, Congress voting on laws, not specifically us.
Decisions are supposed to be based on the Constitution, not on legislation. So, that's why they decide whether legislation is constitutional or not. And the original Roe versus Wade decision was basically that the states don't have the right to tell you can't get an abortion because it's a nationally protected right. That was the ultimate That's the most condensed, oversimplified way I can put my understanding of it.
And now they're trying to take that away, which means it would have to be unconstitutional in some fashion, wouldn't it?
I think the argument they're trying to make is that it's okay for states to be different in this particular regard, and I can't see how that is anything other than it's not based on any new facts.
Well, and Alito's argument is basically that the courts in both the in the Roe versus Wade and then the other two cases that were relevant were incorrect rulings. So, and now there is precedent for that. So, for instance, there was a point somewhere where Dred Scott was effectively overturned and said, "Hey, we screwed up on Dred Scott, so we're going to throw that out and we're going to do something else." So that can happen. So clearly, Dred Scott decision was wrong.
Sure. I mean, but like I said, I think before you got here, Joe, I mean, Roe versus Wade was a 7-2 decision. And so there should be some pressing, new, compelling reason, not more philosophical reason, but like public health reason or something like, or some change in the Constitution. Something has to have changed for them to even really address the issue. Right?
I'm not. Well, I don't agree, because when you think about the mindset of the right wing, to them this is an immediate thing because they're killing kids, they're killing babies, they're murdering them in the womb. To them, it's panic, run around with your hair on fire because of all this infant death. So I mean, I get their passion, I get where they're coming from. I just don't agree with them. I mean, that's what we're legislating on now, is perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's. Well, and I agree with that, but the problem is that, like, if you ended up throwing the executive and the Congress into the equation, then you no longer have a check on the Congress or the executive, right? Because then basically the legislature just say, well, all right, well, we passed the law, we disagree with the Supreme Court's interpretation, so we're going to override the Supreme Court. So see, this is what they're supposed to be protecting us from, the mob. They're basically, because again, as I said, the Bill of Rights is undemocratic. And so that's what they're supposed to be using as a guide, and they're not.
But it feels like, if we're going off of the Supreme Court justices, that there's so few people, it feels authoritarian. It feels like, again, what we're seeing now, there's so many right-wing justices on there that they're just overturning everything they don't like regardless. So that's why I feel like there's too few people on the Supreme Court to make a real decision that isn't partisan. That's why I feel like there ought to be a check on them as well, that all three branches should be checking on each other, because if they start doing this partisan thing, there might be enough people in Congress to say no, right? That's what I'm hoping.
There is one check, but it won't happen because the numbers aren't there to do it. But technically speaking, you can impeach a Supreme Court justice. It's not going to happen, but it's
Kavanaugh gets
on paper, it's possible.
Yeah, it's happened. I think once.
If Kavanaugh ends up on the Supreme Court like he did, then clearly no one can do anything wrong if they're on the Supreme Court.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, that's a whole different topic, because Kavanaugh getting on the Supreme Court just kind of showed how corrupt the whole process was.
Well.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was saying, and really comes down to is that the big hole in our system, as I said before, comes down to that the people who wrote it assumed that the people, for the most part, that the people, doing the arguing, on any side of any issue would be arguing in good faith. Actually, to your point though about more people on the Supreme Court, Kate, there are a lot of legal scholars that completely agree with you. So,
sure, but by more people, I mean hundreds.
I'm not. Yeah, but well, maybe not that. But here's the thing: in the past, it used to be that there was one justice for each of the circuit courts plus one. And if we actually stuck with that, well, there would be like 16 justices right now.
Yeah, I'm all in favor of not necessarily packing the court with lefties as such, but expanding the number of the court through successive presidencies up to, pick a number, 17, 15, 21, whatever, but up to that point, every president gets at least one, plus if someone dies or quits, that kind of thing. But every president up until they get to 21, because when you get 21, the thing is, if you have that a majority opinion would be harder to concentrate and there'd be an awful lot more room for nuance in the decisions, and it would be an awfully lot harder to pack the court one way or the other if you really did try to keep it balanced when you first expanded it to the new number. And that would be a crucial factor. You'd have to throw a couple of bones to the other side in order to keep the perception of balance.
Oh, agreed. And you're right. The more people that are there, the harder it is for any side to have too much power.
To get railroaded.
Right. Agreed. And I'm with you. I think that at the very least, if we stuck with, like I said, with the old tradition, we'd be at like 15 or 16 right now, and we probably, I seriously doubt we would have got this result. Yeah, well, unfortunately, Manchin has already, stamped his foot. No, I'm not going to play. I can't stand that fucking guy. I really
no. He's a plant, man. As far as I'm concerned, he's a Republican, and he just, But that's a whole different conversation. And speaking of different conversations, let's have one. Kate, this morning.
Well, real quick, I released a trailer to my animation. Quinn Redshift has a trailer. It's on my channel. It's the most recent video. I'm pretty proud of it. It's 2 minutes long, which is about 1/10 the length I've animated already. So check it out.
Cool. That's pretty cool. So, Kate, earlier, I think it was today, but it might have been yesterday, we had a little bit of a chat on Twitter because I heard that the new plan from Elon as regards Twitter is to charge people $3 a month to maintain their platform.
Now, good luck with that.
Kazum, I see you shaking your head. Or do you?
Yeah, if he tries that, it'll just fail immediately. It'll just be done. I can't picture him doing that. What I do picture him doing, though, is requiring proof of who you are. And there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be pissed off about that. They're going to no, I shouldn't have to prove my identity. And that's going to be an interesting thing.
I'll be
I'm already pissed off that half of the current events or whatever go to links that are behind paywalls. It's like I want to read a news article that looks interesting and can't. I'm like, I know you guys want money out of me, but not for this.
Well, that's not Twitter's fault, though, right? I mean,
that goes back as well.
Maybe it is. I mean, they keep promoting those links, so.
Yeah. See, this goes back as well to, like I say, we've all been online for such a long time that we can remember when everything was free. Almost everything was free. And as far as social media is concerned, I mean, it's not that I said yesterday, and I have to say I might have retracted a little bit once upon consideration, but I said yesterday, there's no way I would pay to be on any social media site. But that's not true, I suppose, because I paid to have this StreamYard channel. So there's that.
But you're not paying to be on it.
Life that Twitter doesn't have. I mean, I use Twitter in a way as one of the ways I find out about things that are happening in the world, because often things hit Twitter before they hit the mainstream media. So, in that sense, Twitter's been useful for me over the 10, 12, 13 years I've had it. But even a small amount at $3 a month, and let's face it, we all know $3 a month isn't where it's going to stop. Before you know it, you'll be paying $6.99 and then $9.99, and it will just carry on like that. I've voluntarily paid, I think it's $2 a month for MeWe. They don't require you pay anything, but if you do, you can get some extra little things like a dark theme, and I like a dark theme, so I'm paying for MeWe $2 a month.
And that's where I was going with the whole StreamYard thing. I mean, you aren't paying to be on StreamYard, are you? You're paying for features, right?
I'm paying for features, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
that's a good point,
actually. I've been playing a lot of VR. I got the Quest 2 now, yay. And I play a lot of VR poker, Texas Hold'em. And I mean, I haven't had to spend money on chips. I'm good at poker. I have $1.5 million in this game, but there's also a lot of microtransactions where, you want a hat or a little toy or something. And I mean, I didn't want to wait for because every minute you play, you get one chip for the store. Right. So I didn't want to wait the 3,000 minutes to get that cool looking space helmet. So I dropped about $5 and got some chips and bought a few things I liked, including the space helmet. But that's like the only time I've really spent money on a video game beyond the admission price, beyond the purchase price,
Right.
So I'm just saying, it's like, if I'm only willing to do that once, sure as fuck not paying to be on Twitter. Plus, I really hate recurring payments because I'm never really sure how much I've spent.
Right.
Like after a while, it'll add up, and for all I know, I've spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars. It's why there's this robot I'm getting called Vector. It used to be by a company called Anki, now it's Digital Dream Labs, and they will charge you to use their servers unless you buy a lifetime membership, or if you were part of the Kickstarter, you get that for free. But I mean, point being is I didn't want the recurring payment, which is why I dropped the extra money for the lifetime membership, because it may in the long run end up being less.
Right. Well, as far as Twitter's concerned, though, I mean, for me, you made a good point to me in your comment back to me, Kate. I mean, the features on Twitter aren't exactly worthy of, applause. You have a very limited opportunity to make any point you might want to make in your text. You've got, 280 characters now. You can post a picture or links or whatever without it impacting that too much. But at the end of the day, it's a very limited platform. I kind of like it because of that reason. But I am absolutely damned if I'm going to pay for something I've been getting free for 13 years. Plus, is paying for it going to mean that they're not going to mine my data anymore? Maybe that would be worth it, but I'm not paying someone to also make money by mining my fucking data. No,
I really doubt they're gonna charge.
I can think of a way I might be willing to drop some money, and that's if the extra features were rich text, more characters. You may have noticed I trimmed to the verbose, when you post a link, it does not take away from your character count. Because let's face it, if you try to paste a link that hasn't been shortened, it can be your whole message. So it's like, if those were extra features, I might maybe a little bit be tempted, as long as free Twitter is exactly as it is now.
I mean, I think they may, and I think they may end up going that direction, because there's a lot of stuff out there. Like I play a number of games that are free to play, but then you either get enhanced, you get extra stuff if you pay. Although I got to tell you, in some of those games, I hate about it is that you have a lot of people who don't pay and then just complain about the people who do, and like, it's just like, well, somebody got to pay for this fucking thing, otherwise, But so I don't mind paying. Basically, anything that I use, I don't mind paying for. But I do suspect that a lot of people would stop using Twitter. I think there's one advantage of having it have at least a nominal charge, even if it was like a dime. It would potentially curtail bots and sock accounts, because if you had to start, it's kind of like when people have talked about a way to kind of curtail spam email is to have like a really tiny charge, like 1/10 of a cent per email. It's not going to affect the average person hardly at all, but these people that are doing mass mailings that are sending out millions of emails are actually going to start running into serious money, and some of them wouldn't be viable anymore, so it would cut down on the spam. So I think that might be a way to go.
I think the biggest would not spend 1/2 cent per email. Absolutely not. That's too much. I send too many emails. I'm not willing to pay that much for email.
Right.
I said 1/10 of a cent, or even
whatever.
Or in some cases they've even said like 1/100 of a cent. So if you'd have to send hundreds of emails a month to even have to pay a few pennies. But again, it has very, very little impact on you and I. Although I do get about 20,000 emails. I probably send probably about 8,000 emails a year. But for like a mass mailer, even at one penny per 10,000 emails, that's still going to run into serious money for them.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe if there was a threshold where it's like you only pay after so many thousand.
That could work too.
I think the biggest thing that's going to stop spam and bots on Twitter will be his big plan, like I said, is to authenticate all the users. So you can't authenticate a bot. So it's just going to be a whole bunch of stuff leaving. But how do you feel about these potential changes to Twitter? Like, especially how he's pushing for the not censoring anyone.
Well, I mean, I've defined not censoring anyone because I call bullshit. Really briefly, before anybody else talks, welcome to the show, Galen. I'd be very interested to hear your point of view on whether or not Twitter should be pay for service.
I don't think it'll be pay for service. I dissent to you on this one that you think it will be. I saw what you posted on Twitter. I use Twitter primarily. I think Facebook is trash. People just talk past one another. It's hard enough having even a direct message on like Messenger. People still talk past one another. I mean, people just speak too fast to communicate well. Twitter is just so out there, and because it's so shortened, it actually assists it, because if people got too wound up into it, then they talked more past one another. It's kind of a weird thing in language, you know. So I think bots are here to stay regardless, because they make up too much of the money. I mean, Facebook has more fake accounts with corporations and other things than they do actual users. I mean, that's a fact if you want to go research it. Facebook is just mostly made up of fake accounts. I mean, and it's not some random internet troll guy doing it.
Where are you hanging out on Facebook? Because we're having very different experiences.
Well, I'm just telling you what's going on with these. I mean, I understand your experiences, but our experiences, Bionic Dance and we usually have very different ones anyway. I'm just telling you mine. You have yours. Yours is legitimate, and so is mine. So the whole thing is that Facebook, Twitter, they have lots of these bots accounts. There's what we call troll people. Like, I know someone who has several hundred sock accounts, and the person just uses them to be a malicious jerk, harass people, fuck with people. The person's a literal fucking monster. Harasses people, doxes people, fucks with people. That's different from a corporate person, like bot account that's fake, where they have thousands and they use them for business and other things. Those are very different things going on. And Twitter and these social media companies still profit in some ways from all of these things, more so from the corporate ones, lesser so from the other. But most people would be, well, I don't want that troll guy doing it, but they'll let the big businesses do it.
Okay, but I can't help feeling like authentication could take a form where you're basically having to dox yourself. I'm not okay with that, because, like if you send a picture of your license or something, now he's got your address. Now he knows where you live. And I seem to remember a time where Facebook wanted people to do that. Like I seem to remember them demanding you send them a picture of your license.
Yeah,
They forced me to do that. This is funny. The thing that kickstarted me into changing my name legally, Facebook was the final straw. When they said that, you've got to send your license, or you can't have the name Kazoom, I said, okay, this is the final straw. I'm legally changing my name to Kazoom, and then I sent them the ID, and then I was able to have the name that way. But
so what I'm wondering though is, like, if Elon is going to insist that we authenticate who we are on Twitter, what form will that take, and how much will it affect our privacy?
I wonder the same thing.
I just want to say, if he wants everyone that goes to this, like, demanding everyone do that, then he really is against, in my perspective, against freedom of speech, because anonymous speech is one of the most foundations of protected speech going back to ancient times. It is vital that it has a place in the internet community, which is, I have to say, is over the last, since I've been online since 1992, it's really, wow, what a shithole it is now.
But at the same time, there's so many, like, internet nannies. Every site has people trying to sanitize everything you say, to the point where I don't even post Indiana Jones screenshots anymore, because I'm sure they'll think I'm supporting Nazis if I do, because their algorithms are that stupid. It's just like, I'm sick and tired of all the internet nannying that goes on. They should only step in if someone is being a danger to someone else.
Yeah, I haven't really been affected by it, mostly because I when I first saw Twitter, I thought it was a cesspool then. It's even more of a cesspool now. So I generally don't use it, or if I do, the only time I really ever do anything is during political debates. I will, make comments towards some of the candidates, or occasionally, if I'm pissed off about something, I may, say something to somebody some politician, and that's really as far as it goes. So I understand that all these other things are there and their issues, but I can, I hate Twitter so much. I don't touch Instagram, and even for Facebook. I mean, for the most part, I use it to keep in touch with friends, and because of all the other things you're bringing up, it's why I don't use it for other things, because it is a cesspool, but it allows me to keep in touch with people that are friends around the world.
And that's most of why I use both Facebook and Twitter as well. In a way, I like Twitter better just in terms of how the site works. But the character limit is what keeps me coming back to Facebook, because I like to be able to express myself completely and without having to make multiple entries to do it. And so Facebook allows me that freedom where Twitter doesn't.
Something I wanted to just point out, I'm going to say about what G had said is very true, that when there is anonymity, it allows people to feel like they can say more. However, at the same time, anonymity allows people to be as nasty as they want. They can be as cruel and trolling and just foul as they want. And if they're not able to be anonymous, then the discussions that will be on the platform will be more courteous, just by itself, just by that very nature. Because if you say something that's illegal, it really will come back to you.
When I
should specify, when I say illegal, I'm meaning actual like threats of violence, or things that are already illegal now. So.
Well, I mean, if that is something where the internet nannies are going, nope, you can't say that, fine. But, it's like the times where you post an off-color joke. I mean, I was in a thread about dating once, and I said, well, the problem is that boys are icky, but girls are psycho. And that got labeled as hate speech on fucking Facebook, right? So, I mean, I'm sick of the internet nannying. Unless you're actually going after, like, people, you should be allowed to say whatever the fuck you like. Like actually going after doxing or finding ways to screw with them offline, that kind of thing.
You hating on everybody in existence. How you horrible person.
Well, I don't hate on everybody in existence. It's not everybody.
Well, that's true. That's true. You said boys and girls. You didn't mention anything about non-binary people. So I guess they're cool. I'm joking.
Because someone put forth this about this threat of violence. I have to say that I have to really just what is that?
I'm just meaning death threats.
I'm just saying that is just a preposterous argument to me. Let me finish. It's revolting to me. I'm disgusted by it, because Facebook, Twitter, all of social media, since the time I've been on, people celebrate violence and war for my tribe versus yours the whole time. And one person's hero is another person's villain. For people to trivialize that is ridiculous. And to go around like we do it in groups and understanding my meaning system but not yours, how tribal people are and ignorant, is just atrocious. And I understand. I've criticized every single person here over that, and pretty much everyone for years on this. But to me, I'm just giving you my perspective. I understand people don't share my perspective because they look only through their tribe.
I can't help feeling like we're talking past each other on this one, because when I say threats of violence, I mean against an individual. I'm going to go over to where you are and hurt you in particular.
So it's okay in a tribe.
Hold on. I'm just saying that's what I think we were talking about before. If we want to have the tribal discussion, I'm open to it, but I just think there was a misunderstanding or a change of subject before we.
People usually invoke it when they get into those type of discussions and then take it personally with others. Like, there's a person that I stated I have in last week's show that's after me, harasses me criminally. If I went on Twitter and said, I want to go shoot that motherfucker in the head, okay, which has crossed my mind. I can say it, but the whole thing is whether a person says something, it's one thing to say something and understand the meaning of another person and their shared intentionality. And you have to understand it because even if we speak English, there's group meanings of how we understand each other. That's why we talk past one another, because we have this shared intentionality of language. So even if we speak English, we may not understand one another. And then that's how like echo chambers and groups work. That's how any study of linguistics shows that.
Okay, well, but even so, if a website wants to say you can't make a direct threat of violence against another member, and if you do, we're kicking you out, I think that's perfectly fine because they're not the government. It's free speech is only about government curtailing speech. So, you know, if a website wants to say you don't get to start like threatening people, I'm okay with it because you shouldn't be able to threaten people. But if they want to say you're getting a month's vacation because you said a child with cancer is like dark humor, they never get old or whatever, you know, and you get a 30-day vacation for that, that's bullshit. So, I mean, I can't help feeling like we're just, again, talking past each other here. Because when I object to censorship online or when I object to nannying online, it's usually at an individual level.
Yeah,
you know, like if I wanted to say, oh, let's burn all the Trekkies because they don't like Star Wars. Well, that's obviously hyperbole and it's not directed at an individual. There's no plan there to actually burn Trekkies at the stake. You know, it's just trash talk. But if you say that particular Trekkie, it has will incur my wrath. Now you're starting to get into where it's like, you know, that might just be actually illegal because you're threatening an individual violence specifically. You know, I mean, I do think there's a difference between those.
I think if might have a misunderstanding myself, but I think the law base is basically if there's a reasonable expectation behind the threat, then maybe it can be illegal. But if there's no reasonable expectation, I mean, you know, plenty of people go, oh, I'm going to kill him or whatever, you know what I mean? And it's just like an offhand comment, you know, and it's not actually a threat. But if you want to have a strict interpretation of the words, then it is a threat. Right. And I think there's an awful lot. There's so much room for ambiguity. And again, I come back to my who watches the watchers point. I mean, you know, it's like who makes these rules, who enforces these rules, and who is most affected by the rules. And so for me, the best way to balance scales is to empty them to the greatest possible degree. Right. And so you should just have it so that it doesn't favor any one side over the other. And that means the highest degree of openness and freedom of speech possible. And the best defense against bad speech, bad use of free speech is more free speech, to counter it all the time. And I know that's like cumbersome and unpleasant, but I don't see anything that's a potential solution that's not authoritarian.
Okay, well, I think sometimes you have to be authoritarian. I'm not saying the government gets to be. But if I owned a company and people were starting to screw around in that company in ways that I thought weren't okay, I'm well within my rights to fire those fuckers. And I think it's the same thing on a site like Facebook, where if there's people out there who are using the site for purposes that you think are going to hurt a lot of people, you're well within your rights to say, I've had enough. That's not something we're not going to let our site be a vehicle for your hatred. I think that's okay. I really do. And it may seem authoritarian, but at a certain point, I mean, there's no democracy in a company unless it's publicly owned. So.
And to that point, just because to clarify for a lot of people, selling a company that sells stock on open markets is not publicly owned. It's publicly traded. It's still private company. No, I'm not. This is not for you. It's for everybody. It's for the audience. Because a lot of people. I posted this on Facebook the other day. Actually, a lot of people don't know the difference, and I've actually had people argue with me that Twitter is wrong because they're a public company. I'm like, no, they're fucking not. They're a private company that is publicly traded. Not the same thing.
Well, but I mean, if you have enough of the stocks, doesn't that start giving you decision power?
Sure. Yes, it does.
This is what I'm saying, is that's the only way democracy can exist. Because if you got a whole bunch of people with enough stock to start voting on company policy or whatever, or at least to be on a board, then, you know, there is a certain amount of give and take there, a certain amount of different perspectives being heard.
Yes.
I've seen people go further and argue that it should be considered a public utility. And I feel bad about that because it would basically mean that any property that got to a point where a whole bunch of people used it could just be seized as a public utility.
I mean, I've heard those arguments before, and I get it. Like, I mean, a lot of the argument was about the authoritarian nature of the information they'll allow to be posted. And so I can see how that at least is a good argument for making it a public utility, because then they can't do that. And let's face it, the internet pervades every aspect of our lives now, including being on the toilet. How many of you bring your phone with you? So it's like it almost has to be a government utility.
Well, here's a difference, though. There's a difference between the internet being a public utility, which I actually would agree that probably should be the case. It should be regulated in the same way we regulate electricity and water. But Twitter is not the internet. Twitter is a utility that works upon the internet, so they're not the same.
But it is also a conduit for information. If it was a public utility, it would definitely be subject to the First Amendment.
Right. So, for instance, like ISPs should probably and here's the thing. Now, there are private companies that do get regulated as public utilities. There are private water companies, I know because I do work for some of them, that even though they're private companies, they are still subject to the same regulation that a municipal water company would be under. And so so there's control on their rates. If they want to raise their rates, they have to make a rate case in the same way that a municipal water system would have to. And there's a whole bunch of things they have to do. The difference is, so the internet, your ISP is American Water. Twitter is more akin to the company that sells you your water filter, your water filtration system. So they're not the water company; they're a utility that does something with the water that the water company provides.
It still affects us, though, in very tangible, like quantifiable ways.
Absolutely, and the thing is, that company that makes the appliance that works on the water, they are not regulated in the same way that American Water is.
Well, I think the point was maybe they should be.
I would argue not, because then that would apply to almost every business.
Well, but I think part of the reason why people think it should be a public utility is because, like I said, it pervades every aspect of our world. But like more than that, it's sorry, my short-term memory got the better of me again. God, I hate this brain shit.
Well, the thing is, I agree with you that the internet pervades our life. But like, okay, I don't hardly ever touch Twitter. If Twitter dissolved tomorrow, the internet didn't go away, and my personal life is unaffected. If the internet went away, everyone's life's going to be affected.
Well, but I mean, I guess part of my point was that Twitter and Facebook and similar sites are just as ubiquitous. It's like, how many people aren't on one of the major social media sites? So in a way, you could make the argument that it's just as, it's within the same category as a utility because it's so used, and you can't avoid it. You really can't avoid it. There are some people I've seen at like supermarkets where like the Apple Pay was broken and they just stormed out. They didn't pay any other way, not with cash, not with another card or anything. It's pretty clear that some of these things have become necessary to our world. How many restaurants don't even have menus anymore, make you scan a QR code?
Mm-hmm. But restaurants are pervasive too. I mean, we're not gonna turn that. They're regulated for, like, they can't feed you poison. But the thing is that
how ubiquitous the internet is.
They are ubiquitous, but the whole thing is that if we're not regulating ISPs, and people have not made that argument that we're going to. And unless and until we do that, there's clearly no argument to make Twitter or Facebook a public utility. You'd have to go to the ones that are actually a lot more akin to a public utility than something that's an appliance that acts upon the public utility.
I just wanted to point out that these social media companies and what they do are only the most powerful tools of human communication in the history of mankind.
Mm-hmm.
And how they work is of vital interest to and affect all people everywhere and all life on Earth.
Also, I got to very briefly chat with Mark Hamill.
Well, I mean, to the point you just made, Galen, that's exactly why it should be not in the hands of a small group of people. It seems to me that if there is going to be some social media, the public utility arguments make a lot of sense to me. But I think I'm a big fan of things being publicly owned anyway, as most of the group already know. You know what I mean? So, but the argument I think against it would be that people would be worried that if it's publicly owned, therefore the government will control it and limit it and all that. But quite honestly, we have. I mean, it's almost laughable. Never mind. I was going to say something that's actually ridiculous, so I'm not going to say it. I was going to say we have the Constitution, to check the government. But yeah, I mean that.
That is ridiculous. Yes.
Yeah, that is ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the problem was we applied people to these laws, and that's where it screwed up. Is as soon as people started improvising or disagreeing or just not caring, that was the beginning of the laws starting to be less followed than perhaps they ought.
Well, yeah. I would like to dial it back a little bit to the concept of paying for Twitter, because just for a second now, if that was enacted, a lot of people like myself and just general people who are tourists who don't even really tweet, who just like view other people's tweets, and that's what they do on Twitter, they'd be gone. They'd be gone. I mean, I wouldn't like to put a number on how many users Twitter would shed if they started charging, but it'd be millions, I'm sure.
I just can't imagine Elon being that stupid to do something like that. I really can't. I can see what Kate was talking about earlier with
Zoom. It's almost inevitable to me.
Yeah, I mean,
I see what Kate was talking about more.
An equation, so
I think it's more what Kate was talking about, where they might charge for extra options, but not to just be on it in general, because there is no way that the site would go down if they did that. I just don't think Elon is that stupid.
I agree right there. That this thing of if they want to charge for extra features, I mean, YouTube, lots of social networks, I can see doing more of that. That's just. But I don't see this thing where they're just going to shut everyone out and be so literally with borderline black and white thinking. That's this delusional insane. Right.
And also, I mean, if it did happen, it would definitely create a situation where you basically had media people and corporate interests and whatever, politicians and their staff tweeter people. And that would be all of Twitter. It wouldn't be regular people on Twitter hardly at all, unless they had some kind of high social media profile on other sites, and they needed Twitter for that reason. You know what I mean? I mean, Twitter would pare down, and it wouldn't really be a people's site as if it is now. I'm not sure, but it feels like it. I know there's a lot of bots on Twitter and stuff, but it does seem to me like it would change the face of Twitter, and since Twitter is more or less universally recognized as having the power to shape our culture and influence our political landscape. I think that's pretty important and something that, needs to be addressed just in principle, almost irrespective of who owns it or whether it's free or not. I mean, is it too powerful? And if it is too powerful, should you break it up in an antitrust sense? And what would that even look like with social media? I don't know.
A lot of that is what people mean when they say make it a public utility is breaking it up.
Well, yeah, but what does that mean? I mean, so
yeah, I don't know what it means.
I mean, so you got little Twitters that don't cover the entire globe, or only so many people can be on. I mean, it doesn't make
no. I think it's more like just separate them out into different websites, like completely separate entities.
Who would control? But I absolutely have less. I have already stated how much I probably cannot stand Elon Musk more than anybody here, which is saying something, because I think Joe would want to just blow up his head, and I'm much further than Joe. So I just think that I am far more distrustful of the government and any political factions and demagoguery and the lobbyist firm political parties than and their interests than any entity that owns it now.
So here's one thing I'll say as far as breaking it up, assuming that you could even do that. So just say pretend we could. We figure out a way to do it. We do it. It's now a bunch of smaller, similar operating sites, right? We do. It's done. I don't think it's going to have don't think it's going to work out the way people think it will. And here's the thing. There's a number of examples. My favorite example is BASF. After World War II, basically, because BASF effectively invented synthetic rubber, because the Germans were cut off from the East Indies. They didn't have access to natural rubber. So the Nazis needed rubber for their war machine. They invented synthetic rubber. After the war, the American, British, and French companies all felt that this was going to be a threat to their own business interests. So they broke it up and they made GAF. And then a few years later, the two companies were both larger than BASF ever was. And the same thing happened when they broke up, Bell Telephone. They broke it up into small ones. Verizon is way bigger, has way more power than Ma Bell ever had. And they're not the only one. So, if that's what people want to do, if they want to give it a try, I mean, I don't care, because again, I don't really use Twitter that much, but I don't think it's going to work out the way people think it will.
Wow. I just know I'm not paying for Twitter. Although one thing I will say about Twitter, it's taught me how many beloved celebrities are complete assholes and how many of them are total sweethearts. I mean, like it would be really hard to hate on Mark Hamill, but do we need to talk about Kevin Sorbo? Not that he was ever a beloved celebrity for me, but let's face it, I did watch Xena, where he occasionally guest starred as Hercules. But it's like one of my favorite stand-up comedians is a complete dick, I found out, and I'm like, damn it, that's no fair. So I mean, the fact that we have greater access to celebrities now, sure, it knocks them off their pedestals, but sometimes I wish it didn't. Like, what if we find out for whatever reason Tom Hanks has been sodomizing puppies? I mean, it'd be like, dude, no. So I mean, in a way, it's broken that wall down, that sort of of celebrity, and I kind of miss it and I kind of don't.
I want to add that I know a lot of people, like, if they find out something bad about someone, they're against their movies. Like, I see it like almost every day for the last year or two, whatever, about Amber Heard. Now, do I think Amber Heard's reprehensible? Seemingly, because I'm not there. But yeah, yes. But do I want her to be removed from a movie? No. I don't actually give a shit about any of that. I don't care if Mark Hamill is, if he was a criminal, don't care. He's Luke Skywalker. Fine. I don't care. I said most artists and even lots of writers are reprehensible. I mean, really, the whole point is they have this wonderful side to them as being an artist. And I think it's just very black and white how people view things, but that's the internet too. It's a very black and white way of looking at mass information, and it's so much inundation of mass information that we become apathetic. We can't not only comprehend it when there's no way we can even understand it. It's so much coming in, and it does make us more tribal. It makes us more tribal because it's so hard to build a bridge to other people. Even though we have more people all around us at the tip of a fingertip, the distance has grown.
Well, the thing is,
I'm 100% certain I agree with that, or at least I don't think it's the internet's fault, really.
Well, see, I think it is a little bit though. But here's the thing: as I said before, and not this session, but other sessions, that people talk about the bubbles. See, we always used to live in bubbles. So, we didn't talk about politics or religion, a whole bunch of all the hot button issues. We generally only spoke about those if we knew the audience was friendly. Now you can't help but see what people on your friend list are saying about various issues. And some of those are going to be things that, some we might just disagree with, some we might think are pretty horrible. And if we think that those are hard, that makes them horrible. Like I've mentioned this before. Galen was in that particular hang. There are people that I used to game with that I don't even want to look at, let alone game with, because they believe really horrible shit.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's been good to see, a lot of people just rip their masks off so you can see who they really are. And having greater access to the other side has been kind of useful at times. Like having easy access to some of the news clips where they interview MAGA people, and I'm like, wow, they really think that? And other folks as well, where it's like, hell, I just recently saw a video of, like, it was the National Day of Prayer, and a bunch of Satanists showed up, and it was interesting watching people react to them. Also, around about 2 minutes and 50 seconds in, you can see Aaron Ra. It was interesting to watch people react to the Satanists and be interviewed, and some of them were kind of egalitarian about, they were like, well, they're not really harming anybody, so as much as I disagree with them, whatever, but every now and then you get access to someone who's just flipping out because there's people in the world who disagree with them, and that's the only thing they do. They don't affect my life at all. They just exist, and I don't like it. And it's like you say, well, you're not necessarily seeing those things without the internet, because you are in a local, like, location-based bubble, as well as a whatever political interest, whatever bubble. But now on the internet, we can see other people's bubbles and expose them to ours. So I'm not sure, even if that makes us a little more tribal, it also means that some people defect. I mean, it's not like only a few people have told me that they're atheists because of my videos. You can reach people who disagree with you.
True. Actually, Aaron called me before that because he was like, well, I'm good. I'm speaking, and there's a small chance. It's a small chance, but there's a chance I could get shot. So I wanted to call you and let's say hi before I go out there. So thankfully, he was okay.
I want to say what I do basically online. I thought this would be a good subject, Paul. I like to share. I think one of the rare places Bionic Dance and I will share something. We'll have a bridge right here. Is we like sharing about stories we love. We love in the fantasy literature. That's one thing that I'm all engrossing about. Get me going about Arthurian literature. I won't shut the fuck up. It makes me right now. I want to go fix some salmon. So, the whole Fisher King thing. So all I ever want to do is talk about philosophy, talk about literature, and then from there shows and the legendariums that they've had. I think that's a wonderful thing. And sharing, we're here to talk in a lot of ways when it's productive and progressive about stories, where we can share stories existentially of our lives and the stories that mean something to us. And that's a productive way about going about it. And we can find something. Yeah. And by the way, I used to own Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1, the original first issue. I had it when I was a kid.
I think I had a reprint, but yeah. Well, actually, a lot of what I use this for right now is reference. Like I have a couple of action figures I keep around where if I'm animating and I'm like, okay, how exactly would a sidekick go? That kind of thing. And right now I'm trying to build not a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, but a middle-aged microwave samurai salamander. And it really does help to look at a Ninja Turtle to get a little inspired, even though I'm making my own thing that's clearly a riff off of the concept.
I think that a lot of times we get so caught up in the discussions of things that we're heated about. We kind of look away from the things that connect us, that with all these stories and the things we love. I just wanted to put that forth.
Yeah, but have you ever been to like a sci-fi convention and someone just happens to say they like a certain series more than another one, and the next thing you know, it's a nerd rumble? I'm just saying. It's like even the stuff that connects us divides us.
Unfortunately true. Well, and again, I said it before, this is why I've kind of given up fandom, because I think that instead of just liking things and hey, I like things and you like things, and you like some things I don't like, and vice versa, but there's some things we like together. And so instead of getting upset because you don't like the things I like, or getting upset because you do like things that I hate or whatever, it's amazing that people waste so much energy on that. So I'm like, you know what? I'm still going to like things. I'm still going to engage in things, but I'm not emotionally invested in any of it anymore.
Joe, I can't respect you anymore because you haven't seen Breaking Bad.
And I mean, there is a
Awful
chance I'm a
person.
little invested in some of this stuff, just a smidge,
Just
you
a
know.
tiny bit, just a tiny bit. Well, although actually, Galen, I may actually watch it because I'm running. Now that we're in the final season of Better Call Saul, I'm running out of Jimmy McGill content, and I may have to go watch Breaking Bad just to see more of Jimmy McGill.
Well, if we're going to talk about TV shows, I've really gotten into Young Sheldon, and I've come to the conclusion that The Big Bang Theory within the Big Bang Theory universe, is a sitcom actually made about Leonard, but Sheldon's a character, where the young Sheldon character is the real Sheldon that they made it about. I can't reconcile the continuity problems any other way. Right. So it makes sense to me that the Sheldon character in The Big Bang Theory is based on the actual young Sheldon. I realize it's all just speculation on my part, and none of these things are real, but it's still fun to think about. It's the same part of me that likes to think, okay, what would happen if a bunch of stormtroopers were fighting with a bunch of orcs from Lord of the Rings or some crap? And there's video games that let you test that out. But still, I mean, it's fun to speculate. I'm just saying.
Yeah, speaking of Big Bang Theory, that's one of those things that, like, I know a lot of people can't stand that show. And here's the thing that I find weird about that. I mean, look, there's people are just going to not like it because they just don't like it. That's fine. But some of the criticism I've heard is people said that they thought it was insulting to nerds and nerd culture. And I'm like, I know people like them. I went to engineering school. I know people like that. No, that's, to me, it's a loving send up because I know I am at least one of those people.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I just want to say real quick. I mean, I'm really glad you used the word "send up" because that's exactly what it is. There's no malice behind that show whatsoever.
And along similar lines, the guy who created that show is Chuck Lorre, who also created Dharma and Greg, which is about, like an overly privileged guy falling in love with and marrying a complete hippie chick on their first date, right? And it's the culture clash between the privileged and the hippies. Now, I was raised by hippies, and I know Dharma's parents all too well. Not so much Dharma herself, but her parents. Oh my gosh, my parents have friends just like them. And I mean, okay, maybe not quite so dippy, maybe not quite so acid fried, but still same energy. And they make fun of that lifestyle repeatedly on that show. But I'm like, oh yeah, I've seen that before. Yep.
Exactly.
So I mean, if you can't have a sense of humor about yourself, if you don't laugh at yourself, the rest of the world's going to do it for you.
Hey, there's something else. I say that all the time. Wow, I can't believe how much agreement Kate. Actually, you know what? To be fair, when Kate was a much smaller channel, really a few hundred subscribers, I found her channel, and I was an early adopter. So, and I miss those. We used to be very friendly, Kate, and I miss those days. So maybe let's forget. Let's try to avoid the political stuff that we butt heads on, and let's focus on because again, another thing about Big Bang Theory. Two again, very geek. There's Sheldon hates Babylon 5, right? He keeps bringing it up. And I know people who like Babylon 5 who hate the show because of that. I'm like, yeah, but the other characters love Babylon 5 and they get on his case. So, it's okay that there's a character that doesn't like Babylon 5. Just like, that's okay. And the other thing is, on one of the early episodes, there is an issue there's a comic book called Knights of the Dinner Table. It's the only comic book. You're familiar with it, okay?
I mean, I haven't read it in like a decade or two, but I know it.
You know it. And there was an issue of that on the coffee table. And so again, it was like a lot of us I was active on the Kendra forums at the time. And we're like, oh, fucking, that's awesome,
Not like geeky stuff, but I remember an episode, I think it was in season 12, the last season, where Penny and Leonard are talking to each other in their apartment, and the background behind them is blurred out. But I see on the refrigerator a very familiar shaped magnet. And I'm like, that's the Cabot Dairy Company from Vermont. Where did that magnet come from? How did it get on the set of a Hollywood TV show? It was just bizarre to me. And also weird that I noticed it, but whatever. I mean,
Well, of course you noticed it because you knew it, because it stood out to you.
Well, that, and I mean, I have a tendency to notice details other people miss. For example, I can always tell if someone's a native of Texas by the way they pronounce the name of their state, because everyone else pronounces that S like an S, but if you're in Texas, it's a Z. Just say, and you hear Sheldon say it all the time, Texas. But I've had a bunch of friends from there, and they said it the same way, and I'm like, okay. I got this now. If you want to identify a Texan, ask them to say the name of their state.
Right.
Just like people from Missouri say Missouri.
I just want to say to your point about Sheldon not liking Babylon 5. I'm pretty sure it's the very first time that it comes up on the show. Sheldon goes into this mini dissertation about all the flaws in Babylon 5. And like, I love Babylon 5 more than anything I've ever seen on TV. But every single thing Sheldon said was fair. Every criticism was fair.
I mean, I'm not entirely sure I agree, because there are episodes that are complete stinkers. It's true, but I'd say that the overall story arc and a lot of the characters are great. I mean, Jakar and Londo,
totally great, but he makes the point. He makes the point that it's derivative, but what's ignored in that point, of course, is if you actually know anything about Straczynski and how he approached the show, it's deliberately derivative. That's the point. It's harkening back to Arthurian legend. It's harkening back to all kinds of stuff. You know?
Well, and a lot of my favorite shows and stories are derivative as hell. I mean, there's a movie called Star Chaser: The Legend of Orin that is the most blatant Star Wars ripoff I have ever seen, and I think that's why I love it. It's also like the animation I'm working on, Quinn Redshift, and if you weren't here for it, there's a trailer served to my channel. It is derivative as fuck, but I've also made it uniquely my own. It's like, yeah, the ships move like Star Wars ships, but I made them my own, and they have their own like different systems and stuff. And it's the same thing with the characters. You got the big strong chinned hero is Quinn Redshift, and he has that name Redshift, like Buzz Lightyear or Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon, any of that spaceman spiff, right? I mean, it's very derivative, but I think that's why I wanted to make it in the first place, is because this is what I would have loved to have seen as a kid. It's something I'd love to see now. I mean, in fact, I didn't make it for kids. It's just there's this American notion that animation is always for children. It pisses me off. But, I mean, I would have loved it because I could have taken it seriously. The biggest problem I had with kids' shows when I was young was that they always had to be funny. There always had to be slapstick. There always had to be a moral life lesson. There always had to be a musical number. And I'm just like, couldn't you give me a story I could sink my teeth into that's not constantly breaking the wall?
Okay, so I'd love. Oh, go ahead, Joe, real quick.
I just want to really quick to support another thing that Kate said. Anyone who thinks that all animation is for kids just needs to watch the movie Heavy Metal and the movie Fritz the Cat. That should
or Legend of the Overfiend anime. I mean, we're talking purple plasma dicks shooting all over a city. It's crazy pants, that movie.
But I mean, I never saw that, so I'll take your word for it. But yeah, there's plenty of examples out there to just dispel that myth forever. And what you're talking about too is these, as far as these characters, these are archetypes that they go back for a long time. Like heroes.
Right.
Well, and when I posted the main villain, like I've been posting pictures of this animation left and right. I mean, little teasers, and like the main villain, when I posted the first picture of him, I basically said, this, ladies and gentlemen, is what's known in fiction circles as a bad guy. And I mean, it was pretty obvious. He has a skull and crossbones across his chest, and he looks really grumpy. He's got stubble, all of that. He looks like a bad guy. He looks like the space pirate he is.
Yeah, well, and actually, as far as even something being derivative of Star Wars, of course, Star Wars is derivative of a whole bunch of things as well.
Right.
So it's. I mean, there are no totally original stories.
And I keep getting into these arguments with people about like what makes a genre the genre it is, and whether or not a movie fits it. or just a story in general fits it. Because a lot of people like to say that Star Wars is space fantasy, but it's space opera. I mean, hell, if we're going to use the Force as magic, then let's look at all the telekinetics and telepathic people and Q in Star Trek. You want to talk magic? There's your magic. So that's not a determining factor. I think setting more than any other factor determines the genre of a piece, because, and my go-to for this is Seven Samurai. Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai is clearly a samurai movie, but I would challenge anyone to watch The Magnificent Seven and say that's a samurai movie. I would challenge anyone to watch Battle Beyond the Stars and say it's a samurai movie, but both of those directly ripped off Seven Samurai shamelessly. Like, they freely admit this is Seven Samurai in another setting. Hell, it's called The Magnificent Seven, for fuck's sake. So, it's like, I think genre is determined more by setting than anything else.
Well, Star Wars is like the Hidden Fortress. And, if you look at Throne of Blood and Ron, those are Shakespearean right there. So is The Bad Sleep Well. That's Hamlet. So
I don't know that one, but I know The Lion King is Hamlet.
The Bad Sleep Well, Ron, and The Throne of Blood are all Shakespearean Kurosawa films.
Oh.
So each one has a different. Throne of Blood is Macbeth. King Lear is Ron. And then, like I said, The Bad Sleep Well, which is his lesser picture. It starts off as probably the best movie ever, but he just was not bold at the end of it to close it out right.
So
10 Things I Hate About You is Taming of the Shrew as a high school movie.
So basically, Kurosawa rips off Shakespeare, and then Lucas rips off Kurosawa, and then and then these other things, So yeah, it's again, there's no original stories.
The
idiot.
No, and I've seen a stand-up comedy routine that makes a damn good point that Harry Potter is just Star Wars with magic. Like it's fantasy, it's modern urban fantasy Star Wars, and damn it, it's true. I mean, Harry is raised by his aunt and uncle who really don't want him to go into the magic thing. And, he's approached by a bearded stranger who takes him to another stranger as his mentor. He goes through this whole litany of describing Star Wars and Harry Potter. And I'm like, holy shit.
It's Star Wars with the Lord of the Rings skin.
Something like that. I remember thinking, well, I'm more of a sci-fi fan. I want Harry Potter in space. And all of a sudden I'm like, no, wait, that's Ender's Game.
Hey Joe, The Idiot, that's Kurosawa doing Dostoevsky, but his most Dostoevskian film is Ikuru, which followed it because it was just the influence. He did an original story, and that one is the most Dostoevskian about the meaning of life. It's a true existentialist film.
Has anybody seen a Steve Martin and Rick Moranis movie called My Blue Heaven?
Yes.
For those who haven't seen it, it's a comedy about a gangster who is in the witness protection program, and he's living in suburbia and not adjusting really well. And I mean, it's a great comedy. It's really amusing. And I mean, Steve Martin and Rick Moranis are at their best. It's great. But the thing is that they based it on Henry Hill, the same guy that Goodfellas is based on. And Goodfellas ends just as he's going into the witness protection program. And My Blue Heaven picks up just as he's going into the witness protection program. So My Blue Heaven is a comedy sequel to Goodfellas.
That's funny.
That's pretty cool.
That's funny.
I like that thinking.
Oh, I'm not just thinking that. It's really admitted.
Well, I didn't know that. I thought you were just making an allegory.
Well, I mean, they haven't said it's a sequel, but
it's an
everything I said
indirect one.
about it is true. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think what's kind of funny is that I lost my train of thought. That's right. My short-term memory isn't a lot better than Kate's.
Okay, but I mean, I'm an excuse. I don't know if I mentioned this on the show before, but the way the doctors described what went kapowie in my head that started, the seizures that were happening, they said it was an aneurysm that burst, creating a cavernous malformation, which is what caused the seizures. Now, I looked up all of those symptoms, and it seems like my doctors very specifically avoided the word stroke, but everything that all of my symptoms that they described are just like emblematic of a hemorrhagic stroke, which does not have a great survival rate. And believe me, that threw me for a loop.
Well, I'll add something to that. My dad has vascular dementia, and he had what was like you, okay, but they kept going around it, and I was like, so he had a stroke. So I had a stroke, and it was probably about a month and a half in that they were like, he had a stroke, and it was like, why didn't you just say that after I said it 1,000 fucking times?
Yeah.
And I never got an answer. They just kept not saying it, even though I asked literally to their faces. I had to change hospitals too in the time, but yeah.
Well, my grandmother had what they call a TIA. Sometimes they'll call it a mini stroke. It's a very stroke-like. I guess it doesn't quite reach the technical definition of a stroke, but its effect is basically the same.
My sisters had 3 of those.
Yeah.
You know, like my dad, he was paralyzed on one side of the body. He couldn't move his face, couldn't speak, didn't know who I was, didn't know his own name, didn't know what year it was. He went from a world-class intellectual to that. Now, I've helped him with rehabilitation. He somewhat knows the time now. He can't read anymore. So language, a lot of different factors of the brain are still there, and I'm trying to keep him going. At times he just wanted to die because he couldn't function like that, but I've tried to make his life as meaningful as possible to keep him going, and that's become a full-time job.
Yeah, I'll bet. I'm in a similar situation, but it's not a full-time job yet. But I hear you.
But the thing is, I am a little scared because it feels like I'm getting worse at times with my memory. And so I don't know what's ahead at this point. I mean, I remember my dad came to visit like a couple of years ago, and we were walking past a Mexican place. And I was like, I keep meaning to try that. And he's like, we ate there 2 days ago. I'm like, we did? I don't remember that at all. It's kind of weird. And like I say, a bit scary. So,
That is scary.
yeah, I think that was when I was still having the seizures, though. They've been fixed with surgery, but merciful Zeus, shut up, Dad.
The seizures will really impact your memory heavily. It will lead to black spaces in the memory and neurologically. So if you have any problems, again, just find a neurologist, find someone with neurological therapy to keep working on it. Get any type of workbooks to keep writing, so you have ways of making assessments with yourself and you can review it. It really does matter, and it really does help, and you can do it. And please continue to take care of yourself. You made it this far.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have a neurologist, and I'm going to have to get a new one when I move in July, but still I have a neurologist. I've been seeing him regularly. Pretty good guy. But between that and all of the autism stuff, believe me, I am like getting examined left and right. I'm surprised they haven't given my brain a colonoscopy. But, I mean, I'm usually full of shit. What can I say? But I mean, like, I don't know. Okay, well, here's the thing. I wanted to be off of the meds that my doctor had me on, and he was doing that thing like, well, 1 more year. Okay, 2 more years, but I've stopped fighting him on it because when I got diagnosed with the autism, they're like, guess which medication we might have put you on? And I'm like, you mean the one I'm already taking? So, yeah, I'm not fighting with my doctor about the lamotrigine anymore. But still, yeah, I've got a decent neurologist. Hopefully when I move to Vermont, I can find probably UVM. I mean, I know they have a medical center. Maybe that's where I'll go for a neurologist. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, it's all pretty heavy. It makes you realize how sort of, I mean, it's both resilient and fragile at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I know the brain can rework itself, rewire itself but at the same time, when, I'm walking into rooms, like everyone's walked into a room and forget why you're there, what you were going to do. Sure. But when it starts to be chronic, it's scary.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure it's unsettling.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not to that level, but I mean, just for me, I think it's just being older, and I'm hoping that, because I know my mom, not my mom, but my my grandmother had OBS before she died, and which is, you know, it's Alzheimer's is a form of OBS, but not all OBS is Alzheimer's.
Right.
And so it's one of those things that can be genetic, and so like I struggle when I really get upset is when I struggle with basic words, like you know, like that thing with that cylinder with the soda in it, and what are they called again? And it hasn't been quite that bad, but close. But yeah, and again, I haven't forgotten things that happened 2 days ago. Well, not like that anyway. No, where that I've eaten at a restaurant, but it's scary. And so I can only imagine, because I think you're in a much worse situation than me. So, and I'm scared about where I'm at. So yours must be fucking terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'm like, well, whatever happens, and I don't know what I can do to affect it. Other times I'm like, I mean, I don't know if anyone's been following how Bruce Willis just retired from acting because he's got aphasia going on where he just like can't communicate anymore. And I'm like, I don't want to get to that point, but I do have similar problems with words sometimes. Like I was describing to someone going to the doctor and getting a blood draw and talking about, oh, you know, the stabby person. And then all of a sudden it occurred to me, and I'm like, I know you love telling people information. Don't you dare say phlebotomist. Let me say stabby people, you know, like that. I mean, it's just, but I know the word phlebotomist. I just couldn't get it. And that happens with simpler words too, you know, like okay, I need to get somewhere. Where do I pick up the bus? That's it. You know, that happens all the time, and it's very annoying.
No, I've been on, it was like 2016, somebody invited me onto a show, and I generally had stopped doing shows or going on and making videos, because when I would get on, I might all of a sudden, midway through, even with making a video, would be very difficult, because all of a sudden I would just cut out. I would not be feeling well. I couldn't think the same way. I couldn't do anything. And I literally got on a live show and tried to tough it out. It was just so embarrassing. It was just awful. Like it was like I went from high intellectual to just complete dimwit. And I just face planted on the show, and it was just like, not doing that again. I'm just not. It's just like, it was not, first of all, I couldn't discuss anything. I mean, I built up, because usually when I like to talk about things, I plant something, then come back to it. I like to build a discussion. And so I can't even talk the way I want to. There's no way of adjusting, because I can't trust myself to be healthy. I can't, because it can just go out. I mean, I have syncope. I've gone into my hallway and I fell over and I've passed out. It doesn't always happen when I push myself too far. I get really wobbly. And one time, like in November, I was out for like 4 hours in my hallway. I was just unconscious. I wasn't asleep. I was unconscious. So,
wow.
I remember when the seizures started, and I was finding myself waking up in strange places, usually the couch, but not always. I had no idea what the hell was going on, and it was kind of terrifying. And I also have some very impressive photos of things I did to myself before I learned to manage the seizures. Like once I face planted right in front of an ambulance on the sidewalk, and the bruise is freaking epic. But even better is the imprint of my teeth on my tongue that no shit looked like someone stomped with work boots in a mud puddle, you know, like a big old thing of mud, that there was a teeth tread on one side of my tongue. It's crazy. And I was like an idiot. I ate something with salt on it that night. Oops. So, yeah, it's interesting what can happen to you when you're not in control of yourself.
Right.
I was having a problem of falling down.
That's really easy. Just let gravity take its course.
Yeah, right. that was the problem. So I fell. I was on my trip in September, and I was actually headed towards to meet up with Steve Shives. I was coming back. This was on the return trip from Chicago, and I stopped for gas and stopped to use the bathroom. And when I came out of the station, walking back to my car, my mask had gotten tangled up in my glasses, and so I took my glasses off, and I'm like fumbling with everything. And when I stepped off the curb, I stepped off wrong, went down badly, and I somehow landed on my abdomen. I didn't land on my chest, like literally like right on my liver. I landed, and it hurt like hell. I didn't, like an idiot, I didn't go to the doctor. And then ever since then, I keep like falling over, like tripping over things that most people wouldn't trip over, including my own feet. And so I've gone down like 6 or 7 times since then. And so my wife's very, very concerned. She's like, you keep falling. I'm like, and it made it even worse now. So we have puppies. I showed you guys the new dogs. Ow. And so, we have gates. So we have to block off certain parts of the house so they don't get in. So I literally have to like stop and grab the thing and step one leg over and then just like be still and then step the other, because I will trip like constantly through these things, and like I cannot walk through them anymore without falling down. Actually, I didn't land. Thankfully, I didn't face plant. I landed on my abdomen and my arm. I posted the pictures. Mike saw them. You probably saw them too, Paul. When my arm was all scratched up. And then what really sucked is I went to get an ultrascan on my liver, and I weigh slightly more than what the weight limit on the thing I'm supposed to lay down on. Which of course those things are rated, like, whatever they're rated for, they can actually hold probably about 2.5 times because of the safety factor. But they wouldn't let me do it, and I was like, "Oh, you have to go to the hospital." I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to the fucking hospital for this." But I'm really starting to think if I should, because I still have discomfort in that area. And anything muscular should have healed by now. That was back in September.
Sure.
So here's me immediately post brain surgery.
Yikes.
Yep. It's funny, like I didn't know what they had done, what the procedure was. I mean, I knew what they were supposed to do. They were going to stick a laser in there and cauterize the cavernous malformation. But I thought it was going to be like 8 hours of them just slowly making sure not to damage me. It turns out it was 8 hours of me in an MRI machine and about 5 minutes of surgery. So, yeah, it's kind of crazy. And I think most of those 5 minutes were drilling the hole in my skull. So,
sure, and I'll bet the rest was done with lasers, right?
Yep.
And was that done by a robot?
I don't know about that part. I know who my neurosurgeon was, but I don't know what she used.
Right, because I was just thinking, because I suppose that much time in an MRI is so that they can get the most precise, detailed map, and then make the whole plan for the whole procedure before it happens.
Yes.
And do it.
I mean, I'm glad they knocked me out for that 8 hours, because my gosh, that would have been dull. But at the same time, I mean, wow, right?
Right.
Also, I had a bit of a sense of humor about it.
Oh, and for anyone who doesn't know, lasers are really fucking hot. I had to get some skin. I had to do some laser ablative surgery to remove some cysts off my skin. And so the first time that I did it, I was unconscious. They knocked me out, but I had a really, not exactly reaction, but I didn't recover well from the anesthetic. So the next time they said, well, we can do it with locals. And so they're doing it, and they reached a certain point where they realized that the cores of these cysts were deeper than they thought, and they tried to, give me a more local, and it wasn't working. So I was just like, fucking do it, because I just want to get off this fucking table, and so I'm awake the whole time. And so they're burning my flesh with a laser, and I'm not anesthetized.
Eesh.
Holy shit. The only thing I've ever experienced that was more painful was I had this tooth that's missing in the front. When that came out, like after the anesthesia wore off, I literally thought about killing myself because it hurt that bad. But
you should have eaten ice cream immediately after. I mean, too.
but yeah, but when they were doing the laser, because I just wanted to get off the fucking table, so I was like, do it. He's like, and I was like, trying not to flinch, and he's like, oh, we can try. I'm like, just fucking do it. So I'm just gritting my teeth. I'm like, argh. So when they talked about like laser weapons, and I'm like, ooh, no, that's ooh, ooh.
Although I understand plasma would be so much worse.
Mm.
I mean, staple is sci-fi, the plasma cannon, but still.
Yeah, PPG.
I don't know if I mentioned this at the last Jambee or not, but recently I had some time to kill while I was getting my oil changed. And so I just took a walk and I came across a blood donation place. And I'm like, oh, cool. I haven't donated blood in like 3 or 4 years. So, and I've never donated blood in America. So I'm thinking this is great because frankly, I think that donating blood is one of the only truly selfless things you can do because you don't know who you're helping. You know what I mean? And you're going to be fine afterwards, you know? So
Yeah, but you get that cookie.
But anyway, so I went into this blood donation place that I saw. I was like, oh, cool. They've got one right here. So I went in there and I filled out the forms and I took the interview and then they refused my blood. Are you ready for this? Because I lived in the UK during mad cow disease, which was 22 fucking years ago.
That's
Wow.
crazy.
Wow.
Well, I mean, that is the problem with donating blood is some of the questions they ask you like that. I mean, you know, whose blood is this? Where did you get it? I mean, it's just.
I mean, you know, it's prudent to have, you know, standards and whatever. But I mean, honestly, if people who lived in the UK weren't able to donate blood, the UK would be starved of blood right now. You know, if I was in the UK, they'd take my blood for sure. They wouldn't care that I lived there during mad cow disease. You know, it's just weird to me.
Aren't there still a lot of places that won't take people's blood if they say they're gay?
There are.
Yeah.
I also
Or
have
even
the
if-
world's
yeah.
most depressing blood type, B negative. Oh, come on. That was good.
I laughed.
I know, but there's a bunch of you out there. Well, okay, some of you are smiling, but still.
Yeah. No, but I do find it a little bit depressing because, you know, I actually take donating blood as kind of like, you know, something that everybody should do, right? It's like when I've been to donate blood in the past, I'm always impressed by the variety of people that I see donating blood. And it makes me realize that it's, you know, I mean, it's basically the easiest way to help people and you don't have to be rewarded for it. And I think that's worthy.
I mean, there are some things I like to do where I don't, like, I haven't gotten like a reward or anything. A couple of days ago, I was walking down the street and just found a $5 bill. I was like looking around, didn't see anyone because it was like it doesn't matter. The sidewalk, not a lot of people, not a lot of traffic. And so I pocketed it. And then I was going from there to the grocery store, and there was a guy who was like asking for $1 for something. And I said, you know what the hell? And I just gave him the $5 and kept going. You know, I didn't even stop while I had my headphones on. So if he said thank you, I didn't hear it. But I was like, you know, that wasn't even my money to begin with. So fuck it. I gave it to someone who needed it and just kept going. And this is the first I've mentioned it to anybody. It just happened to come up. It was kind of like that time I bought a homeless guy a burger, and as I'm walking away, he says, "Oh, God bless you," and I turn around, I'm like, God had nothing to do with it, and kept going. And there was this couple behind me who were like, "That was awesome," you know. So it was a great day. But you know, just like on impulse, I bought the guy a burger with no expectation of reward. I just figured, what the hell, I was in that mood, you know. So there's ways besides donating blood. I'm just saying.
As far as blood donation centers or plasma donating centers, there's tons of them that you can make some money by donating. So it's not necessarily completely selfless for a lot of people. So.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize. I thought that was like back in the 70s and 80s. I didn't realize there people could still sell their blood.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's actually how, like, well, I don't know if it still happens, but a lot of times people that were either, you know, economically disadvantaged or homeless would do that to get a little bit of cash.
Right, which is what I thought they did away with it for that exact reason.
All your privileges.
I mean, what else are you going to do, though, sometimes if you're that desperate? I mean, especially in these days.
Hell, I've had
I
coworkers.
don't know. I guess guys could at least sell sperm. I don't know. But imagine a bunch of homeless people, maybe even junkies, getting money by donating a shit ton of sperm. I don't think that would work very well for sperm banks. Then again, they do have vetting processes, don't they? So
Yeah, they're very particular about sperm, like,
yeah.
you know, like, you know, what your IQ is and what if you have any genetic diseases and all this kind of stuff. And even if you have like type 2 diabetes, which is what I've got, sometimes they're like, or hypertension, they'll say no because, you know, whatever, but they don't understand how things
That
work.
was actually something that came up before that I wanted to mention, because we were talking about like medical histories. I'm adopted. I could be a genetic time bomb. For all I know, there's something waiting. And like, I have actually located but not contacted my birth mother, so I maybe might be able to ask. Problem is, I found out stuff about her, and she's adopted too. So I mean, what are you gonna do? I guess I'll just wait and see, huh?
Ancestry.com or 23andMe.
Oh,
Ancestry's better.
well, okay, I've been to 23andMe. That's why I know. Like, okay, genetically, I'm like 33% Ashkenazi, 30% African, 30% Italian, and the remaining like couple of percent is everything except East Asian. So I've done the 23andMe. I'm on Ancestry.com and found nobody. In fact, with 23andMe, I found like a fourth cousin once removed or some crap, and that was it.
Wow.
So I mean. And for all I know, that's my birth father's side, who I have not located.
Right.
Okay, so do you have an interest in actually contacting your birth mother? And if so, what would drive that? Is it something you've thought about a lot, or is it something that now that the opportunity presents itself, you might think about doing?
I've been thinking about it my whole life because I've always been a little bit curious. My adoptive parents never were like, no, you're really our kid. They always told me I'm adopted, so it wasn't that thing. I think one of the main reasons I haven't yet, well, there's two reasons I really, really haven't contacted her. Is number one, don't know if she's cool with the lesbian thing. But also number two, I don't know, maybe this is stupid, but I'd like to be a little more successful to have a story I could tell her, which is why I'm waiting to even consider it until Quinn Redshift is done, until I'm done with that animation and I can show it around to a bunch of people, maybe get some interest in it. Then I can be like, here's this thing I did. Just like if she asks, what the hell have you been up to all this time? Granted, I have an IMDb page, so it's not like I've done nothing, but still, I feel like it'd be a lot more impressive to say, look at this like 25-minute animated short I made. I mean, how cool is that? You know?
I'm sure.
Yeah, I found a number of family members. In fact, I met one of them on the trip out to Chicago. And I found an aunt and uncle that I didn't know I had.
I gotta go. I got another thing I gotta do. So,
all right.
Have fun.
Have a good night.
Sorry to interrupt. It really is time critical. So have fun, everybody.
Bye. But yeah, which was really cool, and especially now with my mom gone, like them and their children and my cousin Lori they're the only, like, on my mother's side, the only family left.
Yeah. Listen, friends, I think we got to the 3-hour point. We've lost the member, and I'd like to talk to you all in the after show. So I think
I want to say one thing.
Please go ahead.
Even though Bionic Dance is gone, I can echo this to her later, that she wants to impress this parent that she does not know.
Yeah.
You just got to be who you are and lay your cards down. It's if they can't see that for what it is, they're not going to be open because you have this one other caveat because you want to win their approval with any of us. I've talked to everyone individually here. I've never come to any person where I go to on the internet or even friends, and I'm trying to be like, look at this, to win over where you will accept me. I just have to be who I am, and whether it's accepted or not, maybe we can have this contemplation of understandings of ideas and not where it will be this very judgmental thing going on. I don't want to judge you. And if you want to judge me, that's fine. But I'm just, excuse me, I knocked my drink over. So it's just, I just don't think that's, I understand what she's doing and it matters a lot. I just don't, I think that's the wrong approach. And then I would hope that she would understand that people love her just as she is. And that's all that matters. And if whether this other person does or doesn't, it's irrelevant. just lay your cards down. You're beautiful who you are. Put it forth. You don't have to look at all the A's I got on my report card. Like, if they can't understand that regardless, then, fuck them.
Right. I mean, the way I would look at it, and it's easy for me to say this because I'm not in that position, but I mean, if you lay your cards on the table and you win approval, acceptance, whatever the right word might be, you've gained something. If you don't win that, well, you haven't actually lost anything because you didn't have it in the first place.
Yeah.
Right. That's right.
It's a totally new person, and you can either, when you have to build on a solid foundation, or there's no reason to try at all, really.
And also, there's some people who just aren't even capable of giving you that. And I would say, they can't give you something they don't have. And they also can't give you something that's not theirs to give you. They can't give you your self-esteem. They can't,
Sure.
You have to have that already. And especially, in case of someone who gave up a child, I mean, not knowing, there's so many reasons why it could have happened. They could be out there like, oh, I hope my child is okay. I'd love to find them again. They could be like, hey, I never wanted to be a parent in the first place. And, I hope they had a good life, but I don't want to be part of it. You never know.
Yeah. I just want to bring up a comment real quick that Peach mentioned here, because I was going to say something almost exactly the same. I'm not an adoptee, but I understand the compulsion to impress a parent who chose not to be with you. I grew up not knowing my natural father, and I knew that when I turned 18, I would finally be allowed to meet him. And so that was like really important to me for reasons I couldn't really identify from 0 to 17. It just seemed to matter to me because I was not allowed to do it, that I should be allowed to do. As soon as I was allowed to do it, I was going to, basically. Right. So in a way it was, sort of, I suppose, partly defiance against, what I thought to be overly strict rules.
Yeah.
But also it mattered to me even after I met my natural father that he was proud of me. And I still to this day, I can't identify why that mattered to me so much.
Well, and to your point, I mean, no, I'm not adopted, and I did know who my father was, but he just was not in the picture. He was around a little bit when I was young, but the last time I basically from when I was 9 until I was in my early 20s, or almost mid 20s, I didn't see him again. It actually, the only reason why I even ended up seeing him is that my grandfather, who was my mom's stepdad, was in the hospital, and it was about a year before he died. He was in the hospital, and my father's wife was 2 doors down. So I was in the hospital, and I ran into my father in the hospital, and I hadn't seen him in over a decade. And then even since then, I mean, we've had a very distant relationship for a long time, and he finally died 4 years ago. And yeah, I remember actually kind of the opposite. I kind of had this idea that, well, I went all this time without him and I'll go the rest of the way without him. But at the end of the day, I was lying to myself. And so then near the end, I realized that, he was carrying a lot of guilt about what went down. And so he tended to he would do a lot of chicken shit things. Instead of calling me, he would call my mother and tell my mother to tell me to call him, or he'd call one of my sisters and do the same thing. But at the end of the day, I went to see him before he died, and I had gotten to kind of get more integrated with that side of the family. And I could see that when that happened, the guilt, when I explained what happened the day that I spent down there, that, that the guilt left him, and I could see the weight being lifted off of him, and it actually made me feel better for some reason. And, if I were to, I'm not going to go into it right now, but if I were to tell you all the shit my father did, he was not a good man. I mean, he did a lot of horrible shit, but somehow I still feel connected to him, and somehow I'm his son, and it still does matter.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, and I think we should talk about in the after show. So I'm going to end the live show now, and I want to thank everybody in the chat for hanging out with us and everything. And I want to thank you all for being here tonight as well. And of course, Bionic Dance, belatedly, I'd like to thank her as well. And hopefully we'll see you all again next week. Thank you very much.